The steel beam came down without warning, trapping Vivian Sinclair beneath 1,000 pounds of twisted metal, while Chicago's newest skyscraper collapsed around her. Through the smoke and screaming, she watched the elevator mechanic everyone had mocked sprint back into the fire. Not for glory, not for money. Just because that's what Caleb Hayes did. He saved people while everyone else ran. In that moment, pinned beneath the wreckage of her own ambition, the billionaire CEO realized the most dangerous man in her life wasn't the one trying to destroy her company. It was the quiet single father she'd spent weeks refusing to trust. Before we dive into how these two impossible people found each other in the wreckage, hit that like button and drop a comment telling me what city you're watching from. I want to see how far this story travels. Now let's go back to where it all started. The hydraulic lift gave another sick groan, metal scraping against metal in a way that made Caleb's teeth hurt. He was 30 feet up inside the shaft, wedged between greasy cables and concrete, when his headlamp died completely. Perfect. Dad? Lily's voice crackled through the cheap walkie-talkie clipped to his belt. Even through the static, he could hear her trying not to sound scared. I'm here, baby. Caleb kept his voice steady even as sweat dripped into his eyes. Just finishing up. 10 more minutes. You said that an hour ago. She wasn't wrong. The Meridian Shopping Center service elevator had been a disaster waiting to happen for months, and tonight it had finally decided to quit completely. Caleb had the replacement parts spread across the lift floor, his toolbox balanced on a narrow ledge, and absolutely no business being up here after midnight on a Friday. But the building manager had called desperate, and desperate paid double time. Double time meant Lily's specialist appointment next week, the one their insurance wouldn't cover, the one that might finally explain why she kept getting those headaches that made her cry in the middle of the night. So here he was, holding a wrench between his teeth and trying to thread a cable through a pulley system designed by someone who clearly hated maintenance workers. There's a lady here, Lily said through the walkie-talkie. Caleb froze. What lady? She came to the door. She's asking for you. Lily, what did I tell you about opening the door when I'm working? I didn't open it. I'm looking through the peephole like you taught me. She's wearing a really nice coat. Like, really nice. And she looks mad. Great. Probably Mrs. Chen from downstairs complaining about the noise again. Caleb had accidentally dropped a wrench at 6 in the morning last Tuesday, and she'd been leaving passive-aggressive notes under their door ever since. Tell her I'll be home in 20 minutes. She says she needs to talk to you now. She says it's about tonight's work order. Caleb stopped working. Nobody tracked him down at home about work orders. He got called, he fixed things, he got paid. That was the whole arrangement, unless he'd screwed something up. His mind raced through tonight's job. The lift had been a mess, sure, but he hadn't done anything that would... Wait, the electrical panel. Earlier tonight, while replacing the motor relay, he'd noticed something wrong with the primary circuit breaker. Not wrong with his work, wrong with the building's entire power distribution system. The kind of wrong that could start a fire if someone drew too much current through the wrong junction. He'd reported it, called the building manager, sent photos, refused to sign off on the elevator repair until someone inspected the electrical room, and apparently someone was pissed about it. Tell her I'll be there soon, Caleb said. He worked faster now, no longer caring about elegance. The cable slid into place, the safety mechanism clicked home, and the lift gave a low hum that meant the motor was accepting power again. Good enough. He'd come back Monday to fine-tune everything. Caleb descended the shaft using the maintenance ladder, muscles burning. At the bottom, he gathered his tools with practiced speed, locked the panel, and headed for the service exit. The Meridian was one of those places that pretended blue-collar workers didn't exist. Separate entrances, separate bathrooms, separate everything. Caleb had been working buildings like this for 12 years, and he'd learned not to take it personally. He fixed the machines that made their comfortable lives possible, picked up his check, and went home to the only person who actually mattered. His truck was parked in the loading zone, covered in road salt and dented from the time some drunk had sideswiped him outside a job site in August. Caleb threw his toolbox in the bed and drove home through empty streets, Chicago's downtown towers glittering against the winter sky like teeth. Their apartment was above Kim's laundromat on West Division, sandwiched between a bodega and a currency exchange. Caleb had lived in worse places. The rent was cheap, Mrs. Kim didn't ask questions, and Lily's school was only 4 blocks away. He took the stairs 2 at a time, Lily was waiting in the doorway, still in her pajamas, purple ones with stars on them, worn thin at the knees. She had his dark hair and her mother's sharp green eyes, and she looked worried. "She's still down there," Lily whispered. "She's been waiting in her car for like 30 minutes. Caleb glanced out the front window. A black Mercedes was idling at the curb, exhaust rising in this cold air. Definitely not Mrs. Chen. "Go brush your teeth," Caleb said. "I'll handle this." "But teeth, now." Lily gave him her signature eye roll, the one that meant she was 7 going on 17, and disappeared into the bathroom. Caleb grabbed his jacket and headed downstairs. The woman who stepped out of the Mercedes was not what he'd expected. Mid-30s maybe, with sharp features and dark hair pulled back so tight it looked painful. She wore a charcoal coat that probably cost more than Caleb's truck, and she moved like someone who'd never been told no in her entire life. "Caleb Hayes? That's me." She looked him up and down, taking in his stained work jacket and steel-toed boots. Her expression suggested she'd found him lacking. "I'm Vivian Sinclair." The name meant nothing to him. Should it have? "Okay," Caleb said. "What can I do for you, Ms. Sinclair?" "You filed a report tonight about electrical problems at the Meridian Center." "That's right. That report shut down a private event I was hosting. 200 investors from 17 countries were trapped inside the building for 40 minutes while your emergency inspection cleared." Oh no. "Ma'am, I don't know what you were told, but that electrical panel was dangerous. If someone had drawn too much power through those circuits, nothing would have happened." Vivian cut him off. "The building's systems were inspected last month. Everything was up to code. Then whoever did that inspection missed something. Or you invented a problem to cover up your own incompetence." The words landed like a slap. Caleb felt his jaw tighten. "I did my job," he said quietly. "If someone's event got interrupted, I'm sorry, but I'm not going to sign off on dangerous equipment just because it's inconvenient." "Convenient?" Vivian's voice dropped into something cold and surgical. "Do you have any idea what tonight cost me? The contracts that fell through because my guests spent the evening stuck in a lobby instead of at dinner? The deals that died because I looked incompetent in front of people who control billion-dollar portfolios?" "With respect, ma'am, I don't really care about your deals. I care about people not dying in fires." "Wrong thing to say." He saw it immediately in the way her eyes narrowed. "You're fired," Vivian said flatly. "I'm calling the building owner right now, and I'm making sure you never work another property in this city. Enjoy unemployment." She turned toward her car. Something hot and reckless rose in Caleb's chest. He'd spent 12 years biting his tongue, taking abuse from people who thought his work clothes meant he was stupid. He'd smiled through condescending comments and fought for every paycheck, and never once complained because that's what you did when you had a daughter counting on you. But tonight he was tired. Tired and scared about Lily's headaches, and so damn sick of people like this woman, assuming he was either incompetent or lying. "You should fire me," Caleb said to her back, "because I'm the one who caught the problem your expensive inspectors missed. I'm the one who stopped your building from burning down tonight. But sure, go ahead. Make your calls. I'll sleep just fine, knowing I did the right thing." Vivian stopped, turned slowly. For a long moment, she just stared at him. Then she reached into her coat and pulled out a phone. Caleb's stomach sank. She was actually going to do it. She was going to torch his reputation over this. "What's your number?" Vivian asked. "What?" "Your phone number. Give it to me." "Why?" "Because I'm going to have my chief engineer inspect that electrical panel first thing tomorrow morning. And if you're right, I'm going to apologize. And if you're wrong..." She let the threat hang in the air. Caleb rattled off his number. Vivian typed it in without breaking eye contact, then got back in her Mercedes and drove away. He stood on the curb for a while, watching her taillights disappear, pretty sure he'd just made a very expensive enemy. The call came at 7 in the morning. Caleb was making pancakes while Lily did homework at their tiny kitchen table, still half asleep and cranky about fractions. His phone buzzed. Unknown number. "Hello? You were right." It took him a second to place the voice. Vivian Sinclair sounded different over the phone, less cold, more tired. "About the electrical panel?" Caleb asked. "About everything. The junction box you flagged had a failing breaker that was 60 seconds from catastrophic failure when you shut down the system." My engineer says if we'd drawn full power during last night's event, we would have had a fire inside the walls. The Meridian's owners are facing a lawsuit. Oh, I'm not calling to apologize. Okay, I'm calling to offer you a job. Caleb nearly dropped the spatula. Excuse me? Not a permanent position. Contract work. 6 weeks. Maybe 8. I'm overseeing a redevelopment project downtown, and apparently my current engineering team is less competent than I thought. I need someone who actually knows what they're looking at. Ms. Sinclair, I'm an elevator mechanic. You're someone who sees problems everyone else misses. That's what I need. I don't have an engineering degree. I don't care about credentials. I care about results. She paused. The pay is 4 times what you're making now. The pancake started smoking. Caleb flipped it quickly, mind racing. 4 times his current rate. For 6 weeks. That was Lily's medical bills, her treatment, maybe even enough to move them out of this apartment into somewhere with heat that actually worked. What's the project? He asked. A tower in the Loop. Sinclair Global is converting an old office building into luxury residential units. We're behind schedule and over budget, which means I need to cut corners without cutting corners. You understand? He did. She wanted someone to find ways to save money without compromising safety. Someone who could look at systems and say, this is fine, or this will kill someone, without worrying about hurt feelings or profit margins. I'd need to keep my current contracts, Caleb said. I can't just abandon my regular clients. Work nights. I don't care when you sleep as long as you show up when I need you. And then I need to bring my daughter sometimes. I can't always find a sitter on short notice. There was a long pause. Your daughter, Vivian said slowly. How old? 7. Another pause, longer this time. Caleb could almost hear her trying to figure out if this was a deal breaker. Fine, Vivian finally said, but she stays out of the work zones. I'm not running a daycare. Deal. Good. I'll have a contract sent over this morning. Read it. Sign it. Be at the Sinclair Tower site office Monday at 6 a.m. She hung up before he could respond. Caleb stared at his phone, trying to figure out if he'd just made the best decision of his life or the worst. Dad? Lily was watching him with those 2 smart eyes. Who was that? Someone offering me extra work. Good work or scary work? Smart kid, too smart. I don't know yet, Caleb admitted, but it pays well. Lily nodded seriously like she was 40 instead of 7. For my doctor. His chest hurt. Yeah, baby. For your doctor. She went back to her fractions, satisfied. Caleb finished breakfast, got her ready for school, and walked her the 4 blocks through morning traffic. At the crossing, she grabbed his hand without being asked. Madison's mom says rich people are mean, Lily said suddenly. Madison's mom is probably right. But you're working for a rich person now? Just for a little while. Is she mean? Caleb thought about Vivian Sinclair's cold eyes and colder voice, the way she'd threatened to destroy his career without blinking, the way she'd also called back to admit she was wrong. I think she's complicated, he said carefully. That's adult speak for mean. Maybe. They reached the school. Lily hugged him goodbye and ran inside with her backpack bouncing. Caleb watched until she disappeared, then walked back home through streets that were already starting to smell like snow. The contract arrived by email an hour later. Caleb read it 3 times, called a lawyer friend who owed him a favor, and read it twice more. It was aggressively straightforward. No weird clauses, no hidden traps. Just work, payment schedule, liability coverage. He signed it. Monday morning came too fast. Caleb dropped Lily at before school care, drove downtown through pre-dawn darkness, and found himself staring up at Sinclair Tower. It was a beautiful building, or it would be, eventually. Right now it was a construction site wrapped in scaffolding and safety netting, surrounded by equipment and materials. The original structure had good bones, Art Deco architecture from the 1920s, all stone and brass and old-world craftsmanship, but inside it was being gutted completely. The site office was a double-wide trailer near the main entrance. Caleb knocked once and went inside. Vivian was already there, standing at a conference table covered in blueprints. She wore a black suit that probably cost more than his truck, her hair pulled back in the same severe style. She looked like she hadn't slept in a week. "You're early," she said without looking up. "Habit." "Good. We start at 6, which means you're here at 5:30. The elevator systems are a disaster. The previous contractor installed modern components into a framework built in 1924, and surprise, nothing talks to anything else. I need you to assess every system, figure out what stays and what goes, and give me a realistic timeline. How realistic? Realistic enough that I won't look stupid when I present to the board next month. Caleb studied the blueprints. The building had 8 passenger elevators, 2 freight elevators, and a dozen service lifts scattered throughout. Whoever had designed the retrofit clearly had no idea how old systems interacted with new ones. This is going to take more than 6 weeks, he said. I know. That's why I'm also hiring a team. You're going to lead them. I'm not a project manager. You are now. Vivian finally looked at him. I'm not asking you to play politics or write reports. I'm asking you to fix my elevators and keep people from dying. Can you do that? Put that way. It sounded simple. Yeah, Caleb said. I can do that. Then get started. James will give you an access badge and keys. I want your initial assessment by Friday. She went back to her blueprints, dismissing him without another word. Caleb spent the rest of the day exploring the building with James, a nervous project coordinator who seemed terrified of both Vivian and the construction site. By noon, Caleb had found 6 different problems that should have been caught months ago. By evening, he'd found 12. This was going to be a long 6 weeks. The first real problem showed up on Wednesday. Caleb was inside the main freight elevator shaft, inspecting the cable drums, when he noticed something odd about the structural supports. The building's original steel framework had been reinforced during the retrofit, but someone had done it wrong. Instead of properly distributing the new load, they just bolted heavier beams onto the existing structure. It looked fine. It would probably hold for years, but probably wasn't good enough when you were hanging elevators full of people off those beams. Caleb took photos, made notes, and brought it to Vivian that afternoon. She was in a meeting when he arrived. Through the trailer's thin walls, Caleb could hear her destroying someone on a conference call. Her voice never rose above conversational, but every word landed like a hammer. When she finally emerged, she looked annoyed to see him. What? The structural reinforcement in the main shaft is wrong. Vivian's expression didn't change. Wrong how? Whoever did the retrofit didn't account for the additional weight. The support beams look solid, but they're not properly integrated with the original framework. Under stress, they could fail. How much stress? Hard to say. Maybe years from now. Maybe 6 months. Maybe tomorrow if someone overloads a freight elevator. Vivian was quiet for a long moment. Show me, she said. They went inside together, Vivian in her expensive suit and heels, Caleb in his work clothes. He showed her the problem, explained the engineering, made her understand exactly what she was looking at. Who did this work? Vivian asked. According to the records, a company called Bridgeport Engineering. They're still under contract with us. Then you should probably have a conversation with them. Right? Vivian pulled out her phone and made a call right there, standing in the dusty shaft with construction noise echoing around them. Caleb couldn't hear the other end of the conversation, but he could see Vivian's expression getting colder and colder. Fix it, she said finally. You have 2 weeks, and if I find any other work this sloppy, you're fired and I'm coming after your liability insurance. She hung up and looked at Caleb. What else have you found? He told her about the other 11 problems. Her expression got darker with each one. Why didn't anyone else catch these? Vivian asked quietly. Maybe they did and didn't care. Maybe they didn't look. Maybe they just assumed everything was fine because someone else checked it. Or maybe someone told them to ignore problems that would slow down construction. Caleb didn't say anything. That was way above his pay grade. Vivian walked out of the shaft without another word. Caleb went back to work, trying not to think about what he'd just started. Bus. Friday afternoon, Caleb was running late picking up Lily from school. His sitter had canceled last minute, and he'd spent the whole day bouncing between the construction site and 3 emergency repair calls. By the time he pulled up to the school, Lily was the last kid waiting outside, sitting on the steps with her backpack. She climbed into the truck without complaint. Sorry, baby. Caleb said. Rough day. It's okay. Mrs. Patterson let me help clean the classroom. You're a good kid. I know. They drove back toward the construction site because Caleb still had 2 hours of work left and nowhere else to take her. Lily had been on job sites before. She knew the rules. Stay close. Don't touch anything. Do your homework. The site was mostly empty by the time they arrived. Friday evenings meant the crews cleared out early. Caleb got Lily set up in the trailer with her books and a bag of pretzels, then headed inside to finish his inspection checklist. He was 3 floors up when he heard her scream. Caleb ran, down the stairs, through the lobby, out to the trailer. His heart was hammering so hard he could barely breathe. Lily was fine. Scared, but fine. She was standing outside the trailer, staring at a man in an expensive suit who looked extremely uncomfortable. "Dad!" Lily ran to him. "He scared me." The man held up his hands. "I'm sorry. I didn't mean to. I was just looking for Ms. Sinclair." "Yeah." Caleb put himself between Lily and the stranger. "She's not here." "I can see that. Are you the elevator contractor?" "Who's asking?" "My name is Richard Sterling. I'm on Sinclair Global's board of directors." He pulled out a business card. "I need to speak with you about the issues you've been reporting." Every instinct Caleb had said this was wrong. Board members didn't show up on construction sites at 6 p.m. on a Friday to talk to contractors. "I report to Ms. Sinclair," Caleb said carefully. "If you have questions, take them up with her. I'm trying to help you understand something important." Sterling moved closer, his voice dropping. "The problems you're finding, they're not problems. They're minor issues being blown out of proportion by someone who doesn't understand construction timelines or budget realities. Those structural supports are going to fail. According to you, but you're not a structural engineer, are you? You fix elevators. You're good at your job, I'm sure, but you're not qualified to make the kind of assessments you've been making. I know what I saw. What you saw was normal variation in construction practices. Every building has quirks. Every retrofit has compromises. That's how the industry works." Lily was pressed against Caleb's leg now, very quiet. She always got quiet when adults fought. "Mr. Sterling," Caleb said slowly, "I appreciate you coming out here, but my contract is with Miss Sinclair. I report to her. If you have concerns about my work, talk to her." Sterling's expression hardened. "You're making a mistake. Ms. Sinclair is young and paranoid. She doesn't understand how much damage she's doing to this company by halting construction every time someone finds a loose bolt. People who cause problems on her projects don't last very long." Was. There it was, the threat buried in reasonable-sounding words. "Good to know," Caleb said. "Now get off the site before I call security." Sterling stared at him for a long moment, then smiled thinly. "Your choice. But don't say I didn't warn you." He walked away, got into a silver Lexus, and drove off. Caleb stood there for a while, one hand on Lily's shoulder, trying to understand what had just happened. "Was that man bad?" Lily asked quietly. "I don't know yet." He felt bad. Kids were smart about these things, smarter than adults gave them credit for. "Yeah, it's," Caleb said. He did. They went home early. Caleb made mac and cheese for dinner, helped Lily with her reading homework, and put her to bed. Then he sat at the kitchen table and stared at Sterling's business card. He should call Vivian, tell her what happened. But what if Sterling was right? What if Vivian already regretted hiring him? What if reporting this conversation just made everything worse? His phone rang. Unknown number. "Hello. Why is Richard Sterling calling me at 9 p.m. demanding that I fire you immediately?" "Vivian," she sounded furious. "He came to the site tonight. She," Caleb said, "tried to convince me to stop reporting problems. And I told him to talk to you." Silence. "You told a board member to talk to me." "He's not my boss. You are." More silence. When Vivian spoke again, her voice was different, less angry, more considering. "What else did he say?" "Worse." Caleb repeated the conversation as accurately as he could remember. When he finished, Vivian was quiet for a long time. "Monday morning," she said finally. 6 a.m. Meet me at the site. and bring every piece of documentation you have about those structural issues. What's going on? I'm going to find out exactly who told Bridgeport to cut corners, and then I'm going to destroy them. She hung up. Caleb sat in his dark kitchen, listening to the radiator clank and the laundromat's dryers rumble through the floor, and wondered what the hell he'd gotten himself into. Monday morning hit Chicago with the kind of cold that made your bones ache. Caleb arrived at the site at 5:15, carrying a waterproof folder stuffed with photos, inspection reports, and annotated blueprints. The sky was still dark, streetlights reflecting off patches of ice on the sidewalk. Vivian's Mercedes was already there. She was inside the trailer, surrounded by open laptops and stacks of documents. She'd traded her usual severe suit for dark jeans and a sweater, hair pulled back in a messy knot. She looked like she hadn't slept at all. Coffee? She gestured to a half-empty pot without looking up. I'm good. You shouldn't be. You're going to need it. Vivian finally met his eyes. I spent the entire weekend going through construction records. Every invoice, every change order, every inspection report from the past 18 months. You want to know what I found? Caleb set his folder on the table. What? A pattern, small changes. Nothing dramatic enough to trigger a full review, but consistent enough that it's clearly intentional. Materials swapped for cheaper alternatives. Safety margins reduced. Inspection timelines compressed. All of it approved by the same 3 people. Let me guess. Sterling was one of them. Sterling signed off on the budget modifications, but the actual orders came from 2 project managers who report directly to him. She pulled up a spreadsheet on her laptop. They saved the company $4 million over 18 months. That's a significant bonus for everyone involved. By building something that's going to collapse. Not immediately. That's the clever part. Everything will look fine for the first few years, long enough for everyone responsible to move on to other projects. By the time problems surface, they'll be someone else's liability. Caleb felt sick. He'd seen sloppy work before. Lazy contractors, rushed timelines, corner cutting that was stupid but not malicious. This was different. This was deliberate. What are you going to do? He asked. Vivian closed the laptop. I'm going to the board this afternoon with everything I found. I'm going to demand an independent structural review of the entire building. And I'm going to recommend that we fire Sterling and everyone involved in this mess. They're going to fight you. Of course they are. Sterling has allies on the board. People who care more about quarterly earnings than building codes. But I have documentation. And I have you. Me. You're the one who caught the problems. Your technical assessment is what triggered this entire investigation. I need you at that meeting to explain exactly what's wrong and why it matters. Caleb's stomach dropped. I'm not good at those kind of meetings. You don't need to be good. You just need to tell the truth. Vivian paused. Can you do that? He thought about Lily, about the medical bills and the tiny apartment and 12 years of biting his tongue while people in expensive suits talked over him like he was invisible. Yeah, Caleb said. I can do that. The board meeting was scheduled for 2 o'clock at Sinclair Global's downtown headquarters, which meant Caleb had exactly 7 hours to finish his current work. Pick up Lily from school, find emergency childcare, and figure out how to talk to billionaires without sounding like an idiot. He managed the first 3. The 4th seemed impossible. At 1:30, Caleb stood in the lobby of Sinclair Global wearing the only dress shirt he owned, wrinkled because he'd forgotten to iron it, and shoes that pinched his feet. His hands wouldn't stop sweating. Vivian appeared from the elevators, took one look at him, and frowned. You're nervous. I'm terrified. Good. That means you care. She handed him a bottle of water. Drink this. And remember, you're not trying to impress anyone. You're trying to scare them. Make them understand that if they ignore you, people will die. No pressure. Exactly. She started toward the elevators, then stopped. Where's your daughter? Friend's house. Her mom's watching her until 6. What happens at 6? I pick her up and hope this meeting doesn't run late. Vivian pulled out her phone, typed something quickly, and put it away. If we run late, I'll have my assistant arrange a car service. Your friend will get her home safely. You don't have to, I do actually, because if you're worrying about childcare, you're not focused on the presentation, and I need you focused. The boardroom was on the 32nd floor, all glass walls and expensive furniture. 12 people were already seated around a massive table, most of them looking at their phones. Richard Sterling was there, sitting near the head of the table, smiling at something on his screen. Vivian took a seat. Caleb stood near the back, trying to be invisible. "Let's begin," said an older woman at the head of the table. She had silver hair and the kind of face that suggested she'd seen everything and been impressed by none of it. "Vivian, you called this emergency meeting. What's so urgent it couldn't wait until our quarterly review?" Vivian stood. "Sinclair Tower has major structural problems that threaten the entire project. I've discovered systematic cost-cutting measures that compromised building safety, and I'm recommending we halt construction immediately for a full independent review." The room went very quiet. Sterling set down his phone. "That's a serious allegation." "It's a documented fact. Mr. Hayes?" Vivian gestured to Caleb. "Please explain what you found." Every eye in the room turned toward him. Caleb's mouth went dry. He stepped forward, pulling out his folder with hands that shook slightly. "The structural reinforcement in the main elevator shafts is inadequate," he started. His voice sounded too loud in the quiet room. "The retrofit added significant weight without properly integrating new support beams with the original framework. Under stress, those beams could separate from the building's structure." "And you're qualified to make that assessment?" Sterling asked. His tone was polite, but the challenge was clear. "I've been working elevator systems for 12 years. I know load distribution, stress points, and failure modes. What's installed right now won't hold." "According to you. But you're not a licensed structural engineer, correct?" "No. So your opinion, while appreciated, is essentially speculation from someone who repairs elevators, not designs buildings." Heat crawled up Caleb's neck. "It's not speculation when I can show you the math." "The math," Sterling repeated. "You mean the calculations that our actual licensed engineers already reviewed and approved?" I mean, the calculations that show your engineers either didn't check their work or deliberately ignored the problems." The silver-haired woman held up a hand. "Mr. Hayes, do you have documentation supporting your assessment?" Caleb spread the photos across the table. "These are the support beams in question. You can see where the new steel is bolted to the original framework. The bolt pattern is inadequate for the load. The welds are incomplete, and the spacing violates the building code by 3 inches. One of the board members, a younger man with glasses, leaned forward to study the photos. 3 inches doesn't sound like much. It's enough to reduce load capacity by 30%, which means when those elevators run at full capacity, the stress exceeds what the supports can handle. "When?" Sterling said. "Not if. You're certain this failure will occur?" Caleb met his eyes. "I'm certain that I wouldn't put my daughter in one of those elevators." Silence. The silver-haired woman looked at Vivian. "What's your recommendation?" Full structural review by an independent engineering firm. Halt all construction until we have a complete assessment. And terminate everyone who signed off on these modifications. That will cost us $8 to $10 million, Sterling said. Possibly more when we factor in delays and contract penalties. And it's based entirely on the opinion of one contractor who may be overreacting to normal construction variations. Normal variations? Vivian's voice went cold. I have documentation showing systematic cost reductions across every structural system in this building. Someone made a conscious decision to cut corners, and I want to know who authorized it. I authorized the cost reductions, Sterling said calmly. That's my job. We were $18 million over budget and 6 months behind schedule. I made the decisions necessary to get the project back on track. By compromising safety. By making practical adjustments that still met all code requirements. The support beams don't meet code, according to Mr. Hayes, who again is not qualified to make that determination. Vivian opened her laptop and turned it toward the board, then explained these emails. The ones where you specifically instructed the project managers to find ways to reduce material costs in the structural systems. The ones where you told them to minimize inspection timelines. The ones where you said, and I quote, "We need to move fast enough that problems don't have time to surface." Sterling's expression didn't change, but something shifted in his eyes. Those emails are taken out of context. Really? Because they seem pretty clear to me. Vivian, the silver-haired woman's voice cut through the tension. You're accusing a board member of criminal negligence. That's not something we take lightly. But I'm showing you evidence that our building is unsafe and that someone deliberately made it that way. Or you're showing us that you're young, inexperienced, and panicking over normal construction challenges. Richard has been with this company for 15 years. He's overseen dozens of successful projects. Why would he suddenly start cutting corners? Because this is the first project where he had direct budget authority and profit participation, Vivian said. Every dollar he saved went directly into his performance bonus. Sterling stood. I'm not going to sit here and be accused of attempted manslaughter because some mechanic with delusions of competence scared you into believing our engineers are incompetent. Sit down, Richard, the silver-haired woman said. I will not. This is absurd. We have a timeline to meet, contracts to fulfill, and investors who expect results. I'm not halting an entire construction project because of unfounded paranoia. Then you're fired, Vivian said. The room went silent again. Sterling stared at her. Excuse me? You heard me. You're removed from this project effective immediately. I'm exercising my authority as project director to terminate your oversight role pending a full investigation. You can't do that. Actually, she can, the silver-haired woman said. As project director, Vivian has full authority over personnel decisions, though I strongly recommend we discuss this privately before taking such a drastic step. There's nothing to discuss, Vivian said. He compromised building safety for profit. That's termination. Sterling's face had gone red. You're making a mistake. This board won't support you. Then they can vote me out. But Richard, you're done on this project either way. For a long moment, Sterling just stood there, shaking with rage. Then he grabbed his phone and briefcase and walked out without another word. The room stayed quiet for several seconds after he left. Well, the silver-haired woman said finally, that was dramatic. Vivian, you understand what you just did? I protected the company from liability. You made an enemy of one of our most senior executives. Richard has relationships with half the investors on our current roster. If he decides to make trouble, he can do significant damage. Let him try. Let's. The woman sighed. You're very much like your father. Stubborn, self-righteous, and absolutely convinced you're right, even when you're standing alone. Am I wrong? I don't know yet. That's what the independent review will tell us. She looked around the table. All in favor of halting construction pending a full structural assessment? 7 hands went up, 5 stayed down. Motion passes. Vivian, hire your engineering firm, get your review, and pray you're right about this because if you're wrong, you just destroyed your own career. The meeting ended. Board members filed out, some avoiding Vivian's eyes, others giving her small nods of support. Caleb stood awkwardly near the back, unsure if he should leave or wait. Vivian was gathering her papers when the silver-haired woman approached. Margaret, Vivian said, I know what you're going to say. Do you? Because I was going to tell you that you handled that perfectly. Richard needed to be challenged months ago, but no one else had the spine to do it. Well, I thought you were going to lecture me about making rash decisions. Oh, you absolutely made a rash decision. Firing a board member in front of the entire board? That's career suicide in most companies. But you had documentation, you had a witness, and you had the moral high ground. So you survived. Margaret glanced at Caleb. And you? You're either very brave or very stupid. Probably both, Caleb said. Good. Brave and stupid is exactly what Vivian needs right now. She turned back to Vivian. Hire the best structural engineers you can find, and keep this one close. He seems to have a talent for finding problems everyone else missed. She left. Vivian and Caleb stood alone in the empty boardroom. That went well, Caleb said. Vivian laughed. It was a short, sharp sound, more surprise than humor. I just fired a board member and halted a $100 million project based on your assessment. If you're wrong about those support beams, we're both unemployed by Friday. I'm not wrong. You better not be. They took the elevator down in silence. In the lobby, Vivian checked her phone and frowned. Your ride to pick up your daughter is waiting outside. Black SUV, driver named Marcus. You really didn't have to. Stop saying that. You just spent 3 hours in a board meeting defending your work against a man who wanted to destroy you. The least I can do is make sure your kid gets home safely. Caleb didn't know what to say to that. Vivian was already walking away, phone pressed to her ear, back in executive mode. He went outside and found Marcus, who drove him to his friend's house in comfortable silence. Lily ran out the front door the moment she saw him, backpack bouncing. Dad, Katie's mom made cookies, and we played Uno, and I won 3 times. That's great, baby. Why are you wearing that weird shirt? I had a meeting. With the mean lady? She's not mean. She's just busy. Lily gave him a look that said she wasn't buying it, but she let it go. In the SUV, she pressed her nose against the window, watching the city slide past. This is a really nice car, she said. Yeah. Are we rich now? No. But you're working for rich people. That doesn't make us rich, Lily. Madison's mom says if you work hard, you get rich. Is that true? Caleb looked at his daughter. With her hopeful eyes and her worn-out backpack and her absolute faith that the world made sense. Sometimes, he said carefully, but mostly, working hard just means you get to keep working. That sounds depressing. Welcome to adulthood. She giggled and went back to watching the city. Caleb closed his eyes and tried not to think about what would happen if the structural review proved him wrong. The independent engineering firm arrived on site the next morning. 3 engineers with expensive equipment and serious expressions, led by a woman named Dr. Sarah Chen, who had designed bridges in 6 countries and taught at MIT, for a decade. Caleb spent 4 hours walking them through everything he'd found. Dr. Chen asked sharp questions, took extensive notes, and didn't offer opinions. Professional detachment, Caleb figured. Which was fine. He didn't need validation. He needed truth. On day 3, Dr. Chen called Vivian and asked her to come to the site immediately. Vivian arrived within 20 minutes, bringing Margaret from the board. They met in the trailer where Dr. Chen had set up a laptop connected to several monitors showing stress analysis models. Your contractor was right, Dr. Chen said without preamble. The structural reinforcement is inadequate, but it's worse than he reported. The problem isn't just the elevator shafts, it's the entire building. The room went very quiet. Explain, Vivian said. Dr. Chen pulled up a building schematic. When the original structure was built in 1924, it was designed to support a specific load distribution. The retrofit added 6 additional floors, modern HVAC systems, and significantly heavier materials throughout. But instead of properly reinforcing the existing framework, someone just bolted new supports onto old steel. The building is essentially carrying twice its designed weight on a framework that was never meant to handle it. How bad? Margaret asked. If we open tomorrow as planned? 6 months, maybe a year before we start seeing stress fractures. 2 years before actual structural failure. The building won't collapse all at once. It'll fail gradually. Cracks in the walls separating floor joints, elevator systems becoming unstable. By the time anyone realizes how serious it is, we'll have hundreds of residents living in a building that's slowly tearing itself apart. Vivian sat down. For the first time since Caleb had met her, she looked genuinely shaken. How much to fix it? She asked quietly. Complete structural retrofit, 40 to 50 million, and that's assuming we can salvage the existing framework. If the damage is too extensive, we might need to strip the building back to its skeleton and start over. That would cost everything, Margaret finished. That would cost everything. The project budget, the investor commitments, probably the company's credit rating. She looked at Vivian. You just saved us from killing people, but you might have destroyed Sinclair Global in the process. Better destroyed than murderous. Easy to say when it's not your money. Margaret stood. I'll call the investors, start preparing them for bad news. Vivian, you handle the press, and someone needs to call the city building department. This is going to get ugly. She left. Dr. Chen excused herself to finish the technical report. Vivian and Caleb sat alone in the trailer. I'm sorry, Caleb said. For what? For being right. Vivian laughed, but there was no humor in it. You did your job. You found problems. That's exactly what I hired you to do. Yeah, but I didn't think it would. Destroy everything? Vivian rubbed her face. Neither did I. I thought we'd find some problems, fix them, move on. I didn't realize how deep the rot went. What happens now? Yishi? Or Batra. Now I spend the next 6 months fighting with insurance companies, fending off lawsuits, and probably watching my family's company collapse because I couldn't look the other way. She met his eyes. Any regrets? About reporting the problems? No. You're sure? Because the easy thing would have been to keep quiet. Sign off on everything, take your paycheck, and let someone else deal with the consequences. I've got a 7-year-old daughter who thinks I'm a hero, Caleb said. I'd like to actually deserve that. Something shifted in Vivian's expression. What's her name? Lily. Tell me about her. So Caleb did. He talked about Lily's laugh and her terrible jokes and the way she hoarded books like treasure. He talked about her mother, who died when Lily was 2, and how terrifying it was to raise a kid alone. He talked about the headaches and the medical bills and the constant fear that he was screwing everything up. Vivian listened without interrupting. When he finished, she was quiet for a long time. My father built this company from nothing, she finally said. He spent 40 years turning Sinclair Global into something that mattered. When he died, he left it to me because he thought I'd protect it, and instead, I just blew it up. You protected people. That matters more than buildings. Does it? Because right now, I'm not sure what I'm protecting. The company's going to fail. The tower project is dead, and everyone who trusted me is going to lose everything. Then you rebuild. With what? After this, no investor will touch us. No bank will loan us money. Sterling and his allies will make sure of that. Caleb didn't have an answer. He fixed elevators. He didn't know anything about saving companies or fighting billionaires, but he knew about fighting when everything seemed impossible. My wife died on a Tuesday, he said. Car accident. She was coming home from the grocery store and someone ran a red light. I got the call at work, and for about 6 hours, I genuinely didn't know how to keep living. I had a 2-year-old daughter and no idea how to be both parents. No idea how to work enough hours to pay bills while also being home enough to raise a kid. It was impossible. How'd you manage? I didn't, not at first. I screwed up constantly, fed her the wrong foods, forgot about school events, showed up late to everything. But I kept going because that's what you do when giving up isn't an option. And eventually, impossible just became normal. Vivian looked at him for a long moment. Kwasun. Vivian looked at. You really think I can survive this? I think you're tougher than you look. I look pretty tough. Exactly. She smiled. Barely, but it was there. I'm going to fix this company. Somehow. I don't know how yet, but I'm going to find a way. Need an elevator mechanic? I might need more than that. Think you could handle being a safety director? Is that even a real job? It is now. Someone needs to make sure we never cut corners again. Someone who understands how buildings actually work and isn't afraid to tell executives they're wrong. That sounds like a good way to make enemies. You've already made enemies. Might as well get a better paycheck out of it. Caleb thought about it. Better pay meant better care for Lily. Meant maybe moving out of the apartment above the laundromat. Meant security he'd never had before. It also meant staying in Vivian's world. The world of board meetings and corporate warfare and people like Sterling who played games with other people's lives. I'm not good at politics, Caleb said. Good. I don't need political. I need honest. What if I screw up? Then we both screw up, together. Vivian stood and held out her hand. Deal? Caleb shook it. Her grip was firm, businesslike, and just a little desperate. Deal, Mom, he said. The next 3 weeks were brutal. The story broke in the Chicago Tribune first, then spread nationally. Sinclair Global's stock price tanked. Investors sued. The building department opened a criminal investigation into Sterling and the project managers who'd approved the faulty work. Sterling fought back hard. He gave interviews claiming Vivian was inexperienced and paranoid. He rallied his allies on the board to call for her resignation. He even tried to get Caleb's contractor license suspended, claiming he'd falsified inspection reports. None of it worked. Dr. Chen's report was too thorough, the evidence too clear. Sterling had gambled that no one would check his work carefully enough to catch the problems. He'd lost. The city arrested him on a Thursday morning. Caleb watched the news coverage while eating breakfast with Lily, who asked why the man from the building was in handcuffs. He made bad choices, Caleb said. Like lying? Yeah, like lying. You always tell me not to lie. That's right. So why did he do it? Because he thought he wouldn't get caught. Lily thought about that while eating her cereal. Did you catch him? I just found the problems. Miss Sinclair did the rest. Hey, is she still mean? I told you she's not mean. Katie's mom says any woman who runs a company that big has to be mean. She says nice women don't get power. Caleb put down his coffee. Katie's mom is wrong. Miss Sinclair is tough and scary, and sometimes she yells at people who deserve it. But she's not mean. She's just strong. So, what's the difference? Mean people hurt others because they like it. Strong people hurt others when they have to. Big difference. Lily nodded seriously like she was 40 instead of 7. I want to be strong when I grow up. You already are, baby. The restructuring plan came together slowly. The restructuring. Vivian brought in new executives, fired the ones who'd enabled Sterling, and opened the company's books to complete transparency. She also created the new safety division with Caleb as its first director, reporting directly to her. Caleb's first official act was hiring an assistant. Her name was Patricia. She'd worked construction management for 20 years, and she took exactly zero nonsense from contractors who thought they could slide by on charm. His second act was implementing mandatory third-party inspections on every active project. Expensive, time-consuming, and absolutely necessary. The investors hated it. The board hated it. Sterling's remaining allies tried to block it. Vivian overruled them all. If we're going to rebuild this company's reputation, she told the board, we're going to earn it. That means being better than everyone else. More careful, more honest, more expensive if we have to be. People need to know that when Sinclair Global builds something, it's safe. They voted with her, barely. On a Friday in late February, Caleb was at the tower site overseeing the demolition of the faulty support structures when his phone rang. Lily's school. His heart dropped. The school never called unless something was wrong. Mr. Hayes, this is Nurse Williams. Lily had another headache, a bad one. We've called an ambulance. Everything else disappeared. Caleb ran. He made it to Children's Memorial in 12 minutes, which should have been impossible in Chicago traffic. Caleb didn't remember the drive, just the nurse's voice on the phone, and the way his hands had gone numb, and the horrible certainty that he was about to lose the only thing in his life that mattered. The emergency room was chaos. Crying kids, stressed parents, fluorescent lights that made everything look worse. A nurse directed him to the pediatric wing, and he found Lily in a room at the end of the hall, lying on a bed that made her look impossibly small. She was awake. That was the first good thing he'd seen all day. Dad. Her voice was hoarse. I'm okay. She wasn't okay. Her face was too pale, and there were dark circles under her eyes that hadn't been there this morning. A doctor stood nearby reviewing something on a tablet. Mr. Hayes? The doctor was young, maybe 30, with tired eyes. I'm Dr. Patel. We've run some initial tests, but we'd like to keep Lily overnight for observation and do a full neurological workup in the morning. What's wrong with her? We're not sure yet. The headaches could be migraines, they could be stress-related, or they could be something more serious. We need imaging to know for certain. More serious meaning what? Doctor. Patel glanced at Lily, then gestured toward the hallway. Can we talk outside? Caleb squeezed Lily's hand. I'll be right back, baby. In the hallway, Dr. Patel closed the door and kept his voice low. The symptoms your daughter's experiencing could indicate several things. Best case, they're severe migraines that we can manage with medication. Worst case, there could be a structural issue we need to address surgically. The floor tilted. Surgically. It's too early to know. That's why we need the full workup. MRI, CT scan, maybe a spinal tap if the imaging shows anything concerning. The good news is she's stable right now. No signs of immediate crisis. But we need to understand what's causing these episodes. How much is all this going to cost? Dr. Patel's expression shifted into something sympathetic. Let's focus on diagnosis first. We have financial counselors who can help with payment plans. which meant expensive. More expensive than Caleb could afford, even with his new salary. He went back inside. Lily was trying not to cry, which was somehow worse than if she'd actually been crying. "Am I going to be okay?" she asked quietly. "Yeah, baby, you're going to be fine." "You don't know that." She was right. He didn't, but he couldn't tell her that. Couldn't admit that he was just as scared as she was. "I know that these are really good doctors," Caleb said instead. "And I know that I'm not going anywhere. I'm staying right here with you. What about work?" "Work can wait. But you just got the new job. You can't miss work already." "Lily, you're more important than any job. You understand that?" "Yeah." She nodded, but she looked worried anyway. 7 years old and already carrying the weight of adult concerns because she'd grown up watching her father stress about money and bills and whether they'd make it to the next paycheck. Caleb's phone buzzed. He almost ignored it, but the name on the screen made him pause. "Vivian." He stepped into the hallway and answered. "Where are you?" Vivian asked without preamble. "Patricia said you left the site in the middle of the demolition inspection, but my daughter's in the hospital." Silence. "What happened?" Vivian's voice had changed completely. The executive sharpness gone, replaced by something almost human. Caleb explained about the headaches, the ambulance, the tests. Vivian listened without interrupting. "What hospital?" she asked when he finished. "Children's Memorial." "But you don't need to—" "I'll be there in 20 minutes. Vivian, you really don't have to come down here. I just wanted to let you know why I left." "I'm not asking your permission, Caleb. I'm telling you I'll be there soon." She hung up. Caleb stood in the hallway, staring at his phone, trying to understand what had just happened. In his experience, bosses didn't visit hospitals. They sent generic flowers and took the missed days out of your sick leave. True to her word, Vivian arrived 18 minutes later. She'd come straight from whatever meeting she'd been in, still wearing a sharp gray suit, but she'd lost the severe expression somewhere on the drive over. "Which room?" she asked. Caleb led her down the hall. Lily looked up when they entered, eyes going wide. "You're the mean lady." "Lily!" Caleb said sharply. But Vivian just smiled. It was strange seeing her smile. It made her look younger, less like a corporate weapon and more like an actual person. "I prefer demanding lady, but I'll accept mean." Vivian pulled a chair next to the bed. "How are you feeling?" "My head hurts." "That sounds terrible. Your dad told me you're staying overnight." Lily nodded. "They're going to do tests tomorrow. I'm scared." "That makes sense. Tests can be scary, but you know what helps?" "What?" "Knowing exactly what's going to happen. The not knowing is always scarier than the actual thing. So here's what I'm going to do." Vivian pulled out her phone. Vivian, I'm going to call the best pediatric neurologist in Chicago and have them come look at your case tonight. And I'm going to make sure you understand exactly what every test is for and what they're looking for. Deal?" Lily looked at her father. Caleb had no idea what to say. This was way beyond anything he'd expected. "You don't have to do that," he said. "I know. I'm doing it anyway." Vivian was already dialing. "Stay with her. I'll be back." She left. Caleb could hear her voice in the hallway, crisp and commanding, making demands that somehow didn't sound like demands. "Is she really mean?" Lily asked quietly. "No," Caleb said. "She's really not." 40 minutes later, a different doctor arrived. Older, with gray hair, and the kind of calm confidence that made you feel safe immediately. His name was Dr. Raymond Kowalski, and according to the quick search Caleb did on his phone while the doctor washed his hands, he was literally one of the top pediatric neurologists in the country. "So you're Lily," Dr. Kowalski said, pulling up a chair. "I hear you've been having some pretty bad headaches." "Yeah." "Can you tell me what they feel like?" Lily described them. The doctor listened carefully, asking questions that seemed random, but probably weren't. After 10 minutes, he stood and did a quick neurological exam, checking her reflexes, her vision, asking her to follow his finger with her eyes. "Good news," he said finally. "Nothing about your exam suggests anything immediately dangerous, but we're still going to do imaging tomorrow to be thorough. MRI first, maybe a CT scan if we need more detail. The tests themselves don't hurt, but you have to stay very still inside a big noisy machine. Think you can handle that?" "I guess so." "Excellent. In the meantime, I want you to rest. No screens, no bright lights. Just sleep if you can. He turned to Caleb. Can I speak with you outside? In the hallway, Dr. Kowalski's expression became more serious. I'm not seeing any red flags for something acute, but recurrent headaches in a child this age need investigation. We'll have results tomorrow afternoon. Try not to panic before then. What should I be preparing for? Most likely, migraines. Manageable, treatable, not dangerous. But we rule out the serious possibilities first. That's just good medicine. And if it's one of the serious possibilities, then we handle it. But let's get through the testing before we start planning for worst-case scenarios. Dr. Kowalski paused. Ms. Sinclair called in a lot of favors to get me here tonight. You have a good friend there. She's my boss. Your boss cares enough to track down my personal cell phone and convince me to come evaluate your daughter at 8 p.m. on a Friday. That's not normal boss behavior. After the doctor left, Caleb went back inside. Lily had fallen asleep, her small hand curled on the white hospital sheets. He sat in the uncomfortable chair and watched her breathe, counting each rise and fall of her chest. Vivian appeared in the doorway. Dr. Kowalski saw her? She asked quietly. Yeah, he said it's probably migraines. Probably is good. Probably means not definitely terrible. How much is this going to cost me? Nothing. Dr. Kowalski owes me a favor from a charity board we serve on together. He's seen Lily as a personal courtesy. Caleb looked up at her. Why? Why what? Why are you doing this? You barely know me. You definitely don't know Lily. Why would you call in favors for us? Vivian was quiet for a moment. When she spoke, her voice was softer than he'd ever heard it. When I was 16, my father had a heart attack. Middle of the night, completely unexpected. My mother was traveling for work, and I was alone with him when it happened. I called 911, but we lived in a big house, in a neighborhood where ambulances didn't come quickly. I thought he was going to die on our living room floor while I held his hand and couldn't do anything to help. She looked at Lily's sleeping form. Someone from my father's company heard what happened. They had a private medical team at our house within 10 minutes. Those 10 minutes probably saved his life. And I remember thinking that if we'd been poor, if we'd been normal people without connections, my father would have died waiting for help that came too slow. But that's not the same situation, isn't it? You're sitting in a hospital terrified for your daughter. And the only difference between you and some other father in this building is that you happen to work for someone who has connections. That's not fair. That's not right. But since I have those connections, I'm damn well going to use them. Caleb didn't know what to say. Everything he'd assumed about Vivian Sinclair was getting more complicated by the hour. Thank you, he said finally. Don't thank me yet. Thank me when we have test results that say she's okay. Vivian left around 10. Caleb spent the night in the chair, dozing uncomfortably and waking every time a nurse came to check Lily's vitals. Morning arrived too slowly and too fast at the same time. Dr. Kowalski came back at 8, accompanied by a technician with a wheelchair. Ready for some tests? He asked Lily. She looked scared but nodded. Caleb walked alongside the wheelchair as they headed to radiology. The MRI machine was huge and intimidating, a white tunnel that hummed with suppressed power. You're going to slide inside, Kate, the technician explained to Lily. It's going to be noisy, but you'll have headphones with music, and you'll be able to hear me the whole time. Your dad can watch through the window. Lily grabbed Caleb's hand. Can he come inside? Not during the actual scan, but he'll be right there where you can see him. They got Lily positioned on the sliding table, gave her headphones, and handed her a panic button. The technician retreated to the control room. Caleb pressed against the observation window, maintaining eye contact with his daughter. The machine roared to life. Even through the glass, the noise was incredible. Lily's eyes went wide, but she stayed still. 30 minutes felt like 6 hours. When it finally ended, Lily emerged looking exhausted but proud. I didn't move at all. You did amazing, baby. Back in her room, they waited. Caleb tried to distract her with card games and bad jokes. Around noon, his phone buzzed. Vivian. Any news? She asked. Still waiting on results. Want company? You don't have to. I'm already in the parking lot. Which floor? Base. She arrived carrying a bag from a deli Caleb couldn't afford, filled with sandwiches and fruit and cookies that looked homemade. She'd changed into jeans and a sweater, hair down for the first time since he'd met her. I wasn't sure what you liked, Vivian said, unpacking the food, so I got everything. Lily sat up in bed, eyeing the cookies. Are those chocolate chip? They are. My assistant's mother makes them. I may have called in another favor. You call in a lot of favors. That's what favors are for. They ate together, the three of them, while Lily told Vivian about school and her friends and a stray cat she'd been feeding behind their building. Vivian listened like Lily was the most interesting person in the world, asking questions and laughing at her jokes. Caleb watched them interact and felt something shift in his chest, something warm and terrifying and completely unexpected. Dr. Kowalski returned at 2 with a tablet and a cautiously optimistic expression. Good news, he said. The MRI shows no tumors, no structural abnormalities, no signs of anything dangerous. What Lily has is a severe form of pediatric migraines, probably triggered by stress and changes in sleep patterns. The relief was so intense, Caleb had to sit down. So she's okay? He asked. She's going to be fine. We'll start her on preventive medication, and I'm referring you to a pain management specialist who works with pediatric cases. With the right treatment plan, we can significantly reduce the frequency and severity of these headaches. Will they go away completely? Maybe. Many kids outgrow migraines as they get older, but even if they don't, we can manage them. This isn't going to define her life. Lily looked relieved and confused at the same time. So I just have headaches? That's it? That's it, Dr. Kowalski said gently. Sometimes the simple answer is the right answer. After he left, Lily lay back against the pillows and closed her eyes. I was really scared it was something bad. Me too, baby, Caleb admitted. But I'm okay. Yeah, you're okay, Mom. She fell asleep within minutes, the stress of the past 24 hours finally catching up with her. Caleb sat beside the bed, holding her hand, feeling the tight knot in his chest slowly unwind. Vivian stood near the window, looking out at the city. When she spoke, her voice was quiet. I was terrified it was going to be bad news. I kept thinking about how unfair it would be. How you've already lost so much and you're such a good father and she's such a great kid. I kept thinking that the universe couldn't possibly be that cruel. The universe doesn't really care about fair. I know, but it should. She turned to look at him. How are you doing? Well, honestly, I don't know. I'm relieved. But I'm also exhausted and broke, and I just realized I'm going to be paying for this hospital stay for the next 5 years. About that. Vivian pulled out her phone. I've been reviewing your insurance coverage. Sinclair Global's executive health plan has a family provision. I'm adding you and Lily effective immediately. Vivian, that's too much. It's a standard benefit for department heads. You're a department head now. This falls under normal compensation. Department heads don't usually get hired from elevator repair jobs. Department heads usually don't save the company from criminal negligence charges either. You've earned this. Caleb wanted to argue, wanted to maintain his pride, his independence, his absolute refusal to accept charity. But he looked at his daughter sleeping peacefully and thought about the medical bills that would have buried them without this help. Thank you, he said quietly. Stop thanking me. You work for me. I take care of my people. That's how this works. But it wasn't how it worked. Not in Caleb's experience. In his experience, companies squeezed every drop of value from employees and abandoned them the moment they became inconvenient. People like Vivian didn't exist in his world. Except apparently they did. They discharged Lily that evening with a prescription for migraine medication and a follow-up appointment scheduled for the next month. Caleb carried her to his truck, buckled her in carefully, and drove home through traffic that felt gentle compared to the storm they'd just survived. Mrs. Kim from the laundromat was waiting outside their building with a casserole. I heard about the hospital. This is for you. Just heat and eat. Mrs. Kim, you didn't have to. I did. You're a good man, Caleb. Good men deserve help. She left before he could thank her properly. Upstairs, Caleb settled Lily on the couch with her favorite blanket and put on a movie she'd seen 100 times. She fell asleep halfway through, exhausted but finally peaceful. His phone buzzed. Another text from Vivian. How is she? Home and sleeping. Thanks for everything today. Stop thanking me. It's getting repetitive. He smiled despite himself. Noted. Are you working tomorrow? Planning on it. We've got the foundation inspection at the tower. Take the day off. Spend it with Lily. I'm already behind on Caleb, take the day off. Your daughter just spent a night in the hospital. The foundation inspection can wait 24 hours. She was right. He knew she was right, but taking time off still felt dangerous, like admitting weakness. Okay, he typed. I'll take tomorrow. Good. See you Monday. He put his phone down and looked around their small apartment. Lily asleep on the worn couch, the kitchen table covered with medical paperwork, the radiator clanking its familiar rhythm. This was his life. Small, complicated, exhausting, and absolutely precious. And somehow, in the middle of corporate wars and structural failures and board meetings, he'd found an ally he never expected. The weekend passed quietly. Caleb and Lily stayed home watching movies and playing board games. She seemed okay. Tired, but okay. The new medication helped. Monday morning arrived too fast. Caleb got Lily ready for school, walked her the 4 blocks, and watched her disappear into the building with her backpack bouncing. Normal routine. Normal day. Except nothing felt normal anymore. At the construction site, the demolition had progressed significantly. The faulty support structures were being systematically removed, exposing the building's original framework. It looked worse before it would look better. Gutted. Vulnerable. Patricia met him at the trailer with coffee and a stack of updated inspection reports. You look tired, she said. Long weekend. Heard about your daughter. She doing okay? News traveled fast, apparently. Yeah. Migraines. We're managing it. My sister's kid has those. Nasty business, but treatable. Patricia handed him the reports. Vivian wants to see you when you get a chance. Something about the restructuring plan. Caleb found Vivian in what used to be the building's main lobby, now stripped down to concrete and exposed steel. She was arguing with someone on the phone, her voice echoing in the empty space. When she saw him, she held up one finger. Wait, I don't care what the investors want, she said into the phone. Safety standards are non-negotiable. If they don't like it, they can find another company to build their tower. She listened for a moment. Then let them pull out. I'm not compromising on this. She hung up and turned to Caleb. Investors are getting nervous. They want assurances that the structural retrofit won't delay the project indefinitely. How long is the current timeline? 18 months for a complete fix. Maybe longer if we find additional problems. That's a long time to have money tied up with no returns, which is why 3 of our major investors are threatening to pull funding. If they do, the entire project collapses. Caleb looked around the gutted lobby. What do you need from me? I need you to tell me honestly whether we can accelerate this timeline without cutting corners. No. That's it? Just no? Just no. Structural work can't be rushed. We push faster, we make mistakes. We make mistakes, people die. I thought that was the whole point of what we're doing. Vivian was quiet for a moment. What if the company goes under before we finish? Then we go under doing the right thing. There are worse ways to fail. Easy to say when it's not your company. Is it your company? Or is it your father's legacy that you're trying to protect? The words came out harsher than Caleb intended. Vivian's expression went cold. That's not fair. Maybe not, but it's true. You're so worried about saving the company that you're forgetting why it needs saving in the first place. Your father built something that mattered. Something honest. Sterling almost destroyed that. Don't let investor pressure finish the job. So I should just let everything collapse? Watch my employees lose their jobs and my father's life work disappear? If the alternative is building something unsafe? Yeah, that's exactly what you should do. They stared at each other across the empty lobby. The anger between them was real, but something else was there too, something neither of them wanted to acknowledge. You're fired, Vivian said finally. Caleb's stomach dropped. What? You're fired. Clean out your office. I'll have Patricia send your final paycheck. Vivian, get out of my building. She turned and walked away, footsteps echoing on bare concrete. Caleb stood there, trying to understand what had just happened. Patricia appeared at his elbow. What did you do? I told her the truth. And she fired you for it? Apparently. Well, Patricia sighed. That's unfortunate. You were good at this job. Caleb gathered his things from the trailer, which didn't take long because he'd barely unpacked. Patricia watched him with sympathetic eyes but didn't try to stop him. This was Vivian's company, her call to make. Outside, the March wind cut through his jacket. Caleb sat in his truck for a while, trying to figure out how he was going to explain this to Lily. He'd finally gotten a good job, finally had some security, and he'd blown it by not knowing when to shut up. His phone rang. Unknown number. Hello? Is this Caleb Hayes? A woman's voice, professional and slightly amused. Yeah. This is Margaret Sinclair, Grit. I'm calling to inform you that you're not actually fired. I'm not? No, Vivian doesn't have the authority to terminate a department head without board approval, which she apparently forgot in her temper tantrum. Margaret paused. What did you say to make her that angry? I told her not to let investor pressure compromise safety standards. And she fired you for giving her good advice? She's under a lot of stress. That's generous considering she just tried to destroy your career. Margaret's tone shifted. Here's what's going to happen. You're going to go home. Tomorrow morning, you're going to return to work like nothing happened. And Vivian is going to apologize and pretend this never occurred. She doesn't seem like the apologizing type. She's not, which is why this will be good for her character development. Trust me on this, Mr. Hayes. I've known that woman since she was born. Sometimes she needs to be reminded that being right doesn't give you permission to be cruel. Margaret hung up. Caleb drove home in a daze. At the apartment, he found Lily doing homework at the kitchen table, Mrs. Kim watching her while eating kimchi from a container. You're home early, Mrs. Kim observed. Got fired. Already? You just started that job. Yeah, well, I have a talent for annoying powerful people. It's a good talent. Powerful people need annoying sometimes. Mrs. Kim stood and patted his shoulder. Don't worry, something better will come. After she left, Lily looked up from her math worksheet. Did you really get fired? Maybe. It's complicated. Because you told your boss something she didn't want to hear? How'd you know that? Because that's what you do. You tell the truth even when it makes people mad. Lily went back to her homework. Madison's mom says that's a stupid way to live. Madison's mom says a lot of things. But she's not wrong this time. If telling the truth gets you fired, maybe you should lie more. Caleb sat across from his daughter. You really think I should lie? No, but I think you should be careful who you tell the truth to. 7 years old and already wiser than him. That night, Caleb barely slept. He kept replaying the argument, trying to figure out where he'd crossed the line from honest to cruel. Vivian had been vulnerable, scared about losing everything, and he'd basically told her it didn't matter. Of course she'd fired him. Tuesday morning, he got Lily ready for school and dropped her off, still uncertain whether he actually had a job to go to. But Margaret had been clear, so Caleb drove to the construction site and walked into the trailer like nothing had happened. Patricia looked up and raised her eyebrows. Brave. Stupid, maybe. Both can be true. The day passed strangely. Caleb did his inspections, reviewed reports, avoided everywhere Vivian might be. Around 3 p.m., Patricia appeared with a message. Conference room, now. Is this the part where security escorts me out? Just go. The conference room was a small space in the corner of the trailer, barely big enough for the table and 4 chairs. Vivian was already there, looking exhausted and angry and something else. Embarrassed, maybe. Close the door, she said. Caleb did. I'm not apologizing, Vivian said immediately. Okay, you were out of line yesterday. You don't get to lecture me about my father's legacy or tell me how to run my company. You're right, I'm sorry. That stopped her. She'd clearly prepared for a fight and wasn't expecting agreement. But, Caleb continued carefully, I meant what I said about safety standards. If you're asking me to compromise on that because investors are nervous, I can't do it. I'm not asking you to compromise. Then what are you asking? Vivian was quiet for a long moment. When she spoke, her voice was softer. I'm asking you to trust that I know how to balance impossible choices. I'm asking you to believe that I can care about safety and saving the company at the same time, and I'm asking you to give me advice without making me feel like I'm betraying everything my father built. I didn't mean, yes, you did, and you were right. I have been so focused on preventing failure that I stopped thinking about why success matters. She met his eyes. I don't want to fire you. I want you to keep doing exactly what you've been doing, but I need you to remember that I'm trying, even when it doesn't look like it. I know you're trying. Do you? Yeah, I see you here at 5 in the morning. I see you fighting with the board. I see you making the hard calls even when everyone tells you you're wrong. You're trying harder than anyone I've ever worked for. Something in Vivian's expression cracked, just slightly. This is the part where I'm supposed to say something about teamwork and moving forward together. Is it working? Not really. I'm still mad at you. That's fair. I'm a little mad at you too. For firing you? For not trusting that I'm on your side. They sat in silence for a moment. Outside the trailer, construction noise rumbled and echoed. I don't know how to do this, Vivian said finally. Lead a company, save a project, trust people. I was trained for boardrooms and negotiations. Nobody taught me how to handle actual human relationships. You're doing okay. I fired you yesterday. Yeah, but Margaret fixed it. So, technically, you're fine. Vivian almost smiled. You know what's frustrating? You're annoyingly good at this, at seeing through the corporate nonsense to what actually matters. I hate it. Want me to be worse at my job? Absolutely not. I just want you to be wrong occasionally so I can feel superior. I'll work on that. This time she did smile, small but real. We're okay? Caleb asked. We're okay. But if you ever imply that I'm betraying my father's legacy again, I'm going to invent a reason to fire you that Margaret can't override. Noted. They went back to work. The moment passed, but something had changed between them. Some barrier had come down, leaving them more honest and more vulnerable and somehow closer than before. Caleb didn't let himself think too hard about what that meant. The structural retrofit took 6 months instead of 18 because Dr. Chen's team found a solution nobody had considered. Instead of completely replacing the faulty framework, they could reinforce the existing structure with a carbon fiber composite system that distributed weight more efficiently. It was expensive, innovative, and exactly the kind of engineering breakthrough that made Vivian look like a genius to the investors who'd almost abandoned her. By September, Sinclair Tower was no longer a gutted corpse. The bones were solid now, properly supported, ready to become something beautiful. Caleb walked through the building every morning, checking systems that hummed with quiet efficiency and felt something close to pride. He'd saved this place. Not alone, obviously, but he'd been the first domino. The one who'd refused to look away when everyone else was willing to pretend the problems didn't exist. On a Tuesday afternoon in late September, Vivian called him to her office at headquarters, not the construction trailer. The actual corner office on the 32nd floor with the view of Lake Michigan and furniture that cost more than Caleb's truck. Sit, she said without looking up from her laptop. Caleb sat. The chair was uncomfortably expensive. How's Lily doing? Vivian asked, still typing. Good. The new medication is working. She's only had 1 migraine in the past 3 months. Excellent. Vivian closed the laptop and finally met his eyes. I'm promoting you. To what? Chief Safety Officer for Sinclair Global. You'll oversee safety standards and compliance across all company projects, not just the tower. Significant pay increase, better benefits, actual office with a door. Interested? Caleb's brain stalled. That's a real position? It is now. The board approved it this morning. Margaret pushed it through, actually. She likes you. I'm not qualified for something like that. You're the most qualified person I know. You see problems before they become disasters. You're not afraid to fight executives. And you actually care whether people live or die. That's the entire job description. Vivian, I fix elevators. I don't run departments. You already run a department. I'm just making it bigger. She slid a folder across the desk. Contracts inside. Read it, think about it, give me an answer by Friday. Caleb picked up the folder but didn't open it. Why are you doing this? Because you're good at what you do and I want to keep you. That's not the whole reason. Vivian leaned back in her chair, studying him. You want the honest answer. Always. Because 6 months ago you stood in a boardroom and defended your work against people who wanted to destroy you. And you did it without flinching, without backing down, without apologizing for being right. I need people like that, people who won't compromise when it matters. That sounds like a terrible quality in an employee. It's an awful quality in an employee. It's essential in a leader. She paused. Also, Lily told me last week that she wants to be an engineer when she grows up. I'd like to think I had something to do with that. When did you talk to Lily? She comes to the site sometimes after school. Did you not know that? Caleb definitely did not know that. What's she doing at the construction site? Asking questions, mostly. She's curious about everything. Smart kid. Reminds me of myself at that age, except with better social skills. The image of Lily and Vivian having conversations behind his back was both alarming and oddly touching. She's not bothering you? She's the least annoying person at that entire site. Last week she asked me why we use steel beams instead of concrete columns, and I actually had to look up the engineering specs to give her a proper answer. Caleb didn't know what to do with any of this information. His carefully separated worlds were bleeding together in ways he hadn't anticipated. Read the contract, Vivian said. We'll talk Friday. He took the folder home and read it that night after Lily went to bed. The salary made him feel slightly sick. Not because it was low, but because it was more money than he'd ever imagined making. Enough to move out of the apartment above the laundromat. Enough to stop worrying about medical bills or whether his truck would survive another winter. Enough to change everything. On Friday, he brought the signed contract back to Vivian's office. She looked at the signature and nodded. Good. You start Monday. Patricia's moving over to be your assistant, so you'll have someone who actually knows how corporate bureaucracy works. I'm going to be terrible at this. Probably, but you'll figure it out. She stood and held out her hand. Welcome to management, Caleb. Try not to fire anyone on your first day. Can I fire people? Technically, yes. Practically, please don't. They shook hands. Her grip was firm and warm, and she held on just slightly longer than professional courtesy required. Long enough for Caleb to wonder if he was imagining things or if something unspoken was happening between them. Then the moment passed, and Vivian was back in executive mode, already moving on to her next crisis. Caleb's first week as chief safety officer involved approximately 600 emails, 4 emergency calls about projects he'd never heard of, and a crash course in corporate politics taught by Patricia over increasingly desperate coffee breaks. Rule 1, Patricia said on Wednesday morning, never respond to emails after 8 p.m. It sets a precedent that you're always available. What if there's an emergency? Then someone will call. Emails can wait. Rule 2, learn to say no politely. Half your job is going to be project managers asking you to approve things that are almost but not quite safe enough. You have to shut them down without making them feel stupid. How do I do that? I'll teach you, but it's going to take practice. By the end of the week, Caleb had reviewed safety protocols for 11 active projects, flagged problems on 6 of them, and accidentally started a turf war with a project director in Minneapolis who didn't appreciate being told his electrical systems were inadequate. You made an enemy, Patricia observed cheerfully on Friday afternoon. I told him the truth. Same thing in this business, but don't worry. Vivian will back you. She always backs her people when they're right. That was becoming clear. Over the next several weeks, Caleb watched Vivian go to war for him at least a dozen times. Project managers complained that he was too strict, too inflexible, too focused on worst-case scenarios. Vivian shut them down every single time. If Caleb says something's unsafe, it's unsafe, she told the operations team during one particularly heated meeting. I don't care if it delays the timeline. Fix the problem or find another company to work for. The operations team fixed the problem. By October, Caleb had settled into the new role enough to occasionally feel competent instead of constantly terrified. His office was small but had a door and a window, which felt impossibly luxurious after 12 years of working out of trucks and toolboxes. Patricia had decorated it with safety posters that were supposed to be inspiring, but mostly just featured people wearing hard hats and looking concerned. Lily visited sometimes after school doing homework at the small conference table while Caleb reviewed reports. She'd made friends with the receptionist, who kept a candy dish specifically for her visits. On a Thursday in late October, Caleb was deep into a structural analysis report when his office door opened without warning. He looked up, ready to remind whoever it was that knocking was polite. Vivian stood in the doorway looking slightly frantic. "I need a favor," she said. "Okay, I have a charity gala tomorrow night. Black tie, donors, speeches, the whole horrible performance. My date canceled this morning, and I need someone to go with me so I don't spend the entire evening fending off creepy investors who think I'm looking for a husband." Caleb blinked. "You want me to be your fake date?" "Caleb, I want you to be my colleague who happens to be attending the same event and standing near me so I look unavailable. Is that a problem?" "I don't own a tuxedo, Chishi. I'll have one sent to your apartment. What's your size?" "Vivian, I don't think—" "Please." The word came out softer than her usual commands. "I know it's short notice, and I know this isn't in your job description, but I really don't want to do this alone." There was something vulnerable in her expression that Caleb had only seen a few times before, the version of Vivian that existed underneath the executive armor. "Okay," he said. "I'll go." Relief flooded her face. "Thank you. I'll send you the details. It starts at 7, but we can arrive fashionably late around 7:30. Do I need to know anything specific? Don't mention work, don't discuss the tower project, and if anyone asks how we know each other, say we're colleagues. That's it." She left before Caleb could change his mind. That evening, he told Lily about this gala while making dinner. "You're going to a fancy party with the mean lady?" Lily looked delighted. "She's not mean." "I know, but it's fun to say." Lily twirled spaghetti on her fork. "Are you going as her boyfriend?" "No, I'm going as her colleague." "That's boring. You should go as her boyfriend." "Lily, that's not how this works." "Why not? You like her." Caleb nearly dropped the pot he was washing. "What makes you think that?" "You get a weird look on your face when you talk about her. Like when I talk about the chocolate cake at the bakery on Division Street." "I do not look at Vivian like she's chocolate cake." "Yeah, you do. It's embarrassing." 7 years old and already a relationship expert, apparently. The tuxedo arrived the next afternoon, perfectly tailored and probably worth more than every piece of clothing Caleb currently owned combined. He tried it on in his bedroom, feeling ridiculous and slightly like he was playing dress-up in someone else's life. Mrs. Kim knocked on the door at 6:30, ready to watch Lily for the evening. "Look at you," Mrs. Kim said approvingly. "Very handsome. Your boss will be impressed." "It's not like that." "Of course not. You always wear expensive tuxedos to colleague events." She pushed past him into the apartment. "Go. Have fun. Don't worry about Lily. We'll make popcorn and watch movies." Caleb kissed his daughter goodbye, gave Mrs. Kim the emergency numbers she already had memorized, and headed downtown in his battered truck. The contrast between his formal clothes and the vehicle's duct-taped seats was not lost on him. The gala was being held at the Peninsula Hotel, all marble columns and glittering chandeliers. Caleb pulled up to the valet stand, suddenly aware that his truck was going to look absurd parked among the Teslas and Mercedes. The valet took his keys without judgment, which Caleb appreciated. Inside, the lobby had been transformed into something out of a movie. String quartet playing in the corner, champagne circulating on silver trays, people in evening wear laughing and networking. Caleb felt immediately out of place. He found Vivian near the main ballroom entrance, and for a moment forgot how to form words. She wore a dark blue dress that was elegant without being showy, hair pulled up to show her neck, minimal jewelry. She looked sophisticated and beautiful and absolutely nothing like the woman who spent her days in hard hats and construction boots. "You clean up well?" Vivian said when she spotted him. "You too." Caleb's brain was not providing better words. "The tuxedo fits." "Your assistant's measurements were accurate." "Patricia's good at details." Vivian glanced around the lobby. "Fair warning, this is going to be tedious. Lots of small talk with wealthy people who want to feel good about themselves by writing checks." "Sounds terrible." "It is, but it funds programs for underprivileged kids to learn engineering and construction skills, so I suffer through it every year." They entered the ballroom together. Caleb stayed close, but not too close. trying to project colleague instead of date without entirely knowing what the difference looked like. The evening progressed exactly as Vivian had predicted. Endless conversations with donors who wanted to talk about their vacation homes and investment portfolios. Caleb nodded politely and tried not to say anything embarrassing while Vivian navigated the social dynamics with practiced ease. Around 9 p.m., they finally escaped to a quiet corner near the bar. "You're doing great," Vivian said. "I haven't said more than 10 words all night." "Exactly. You're letting me handle the talking while looking supportive and vaguely protective. It's perfect." "Vaguely protective?" "You keep scanning the room like you're expecting threats. It's very bodyguard-esque. Several people asked if you were my security detail." "What did you tell them?" "Gi ambosati. That you're my chief safety officer, which is technically true and sounds impressive enough that they stopped asking questions." A waiter passed with champagne. Vivian grabbed 2 glasses and handed one to Caleb. "I don't usually drink at work events," he said. "This isn't a work event. This is me dragging you to something awful as a human shield. You've earned the champagne." They stood in comfortable silence for a moment, watching the crowd swirl and network and pretend to enjoy themselves. "Can I ask you something?" Caleb said. "Depends on the question." "Why don't you have an actual date for these things? Someone who's not an employee you bribed into attending." Vivian took a long sip of champagne before answering. "Because everyone I date either wants something from me or is intimidated by me, usually both. It's exhausting." "That sounds lonely." "It is, but it's simpler than trying to figure out if someone actually likes me or just likes what I can do for them." "For what it's worth, I don't think you're intimidating." Vivian laughed. "Yes, you do. You were terrified of me for the first month we worked together." "Okay, fair. But I'm not terrified anymore." "What changed?" "I figured out you're not actually scary. You're just really good at pretending to be." "That's the nicest thing anyone's said to me in months." Vivian finished her champagne. "Come on, we have to do the dinner portion, which is somehow worse than the networking." Dinner was indeed worse. Caleb ended up seated between a real estate developer who wouldn't stop talking about his yacht and a philanthropist who kept asking invasive questions about Caleb's background. Vivian was 3 seats away, trapped in conversation with an elderly couple who apparently donated millions to the foundation every year. Halfway through the main course, the real estate developer leaned over. "So how long have you been sleeping with Vivian?" Caleb nearly choked on his water. "Excuse me? Come on. You're here as her date. You're watching her like a hawk, and she keeps looking at you when she thinks no one's paying attention. It's obvious. We work together. That's it." "Sure, and I bought my yacht with pocket change." The developer grinned. "Look, I don't care who she's dating, but you should know that every unmarried woman in her position gets treated like a prize to be won. If you're actually with her, you might want to make it clear before someone else makes a move." Before Caleb could respond, someone clinked a glass. Speech time. The foundation director spoke first, thanking everyone for their generous donations. Then Vivian took the podium, and Caleb watched her transform again. Not the executive, not the colleague, but something else entirely. Passionate and articulate, talking about the importance of giving kids from difficult backgrounds access to careers that could change their lives. "I grew up with every advantage," Vivian said. "Private schools, connections, opportunities that were handed to me because of my last name. But talent isn't distributed based on wealth. Intelligence doesn't care about zip codes. Some of the smartest people I know came from nowhere, fought for everything, and deserve chances they'll never get without programs like this one." She talked about the scholarship recipients sitting in the audience, kids from rough neighborhoods who were now studying engineering at top universities. She talked about the importance of recognizing potential instead of pedigree. And when she finished, the room erupted in applause that felt genuine instead of polite. Vivian returned to the table looking slightly embarrassed by the attention. The elderly couple congratulated her on the speech. The real estate developer made another inappropriate comment that Caleb chose to ignore. After dinner, dancing started. Caleb was planning to stay safely at the table when Vivian appeared at his elbow. "Dance with me," she said. "I don't really dance." "Neither do I. We'll be terrible together," and she pulled him onto the floor before he could protest further. The song was slow, thankfully, which meant Caleb could fake his way through it without completely humiliating himself. Thank you for coming tonight, Vivian said quietly. This is usually my least favorite event of the year, but it's been almost tolerable with you here. Almost tolerable. High praise. I'm not good at this, at saying things that aren't about work or strategy or solving problems, but I want you to know that I'm glad you're here. Not just tonight, in general. Working with me. Being someone I can trust. I'm glad I'm here too. They swayed together, not quite in rhythm with the music, but close enough. Other couples danced around them, laughing and talking, but Caleb barely noticed. He was focused entirely on Vivian, on the slight softness in her expression, on the way she'd let her guard down for just this moment. That developer asked if we were sleeping together, Caleb said. Vivian tensed slightly. What did you tell him? That we work together, nothing else. Good answer. She paused. Was that the right answer? Caleb's heart did something complicated. What do you mean? I mean that I've been trying very hard to keep things professional between us, to not think about how much I enjoy your company or how often I look for excuses to talk to you, to pretend that bringing you here tonight was purely practical and not because I wanted to spend an evening with you. Vivian, and I know this is complicated. You work for me, which makes any kind of relationship inappropriate and probably a terrible idea. But I'm tired of pretending I don't feel this. The song ended. The string quartet transitioned into something livelier. Around them, people shifted and regrouped, finding new partners or heading back to their tables. Caleb and Vivian stood still. I have a 7-year-old daughter, Caleb said finally. I work too many hours. I have no idea how to date someone with your life, and I'm probably going to screw this up in ways I can't even imagine yet. Is that a yes or a no? This is a terrible idea, but I'm interested anyway. Vivian smiled. Actually smiled, not the corporate version, but something real and slightly nervous. We should probably talk about this when we're not at a public event. Probably. Tomorrow? Dinner? I'd need to find a sitter for Lily. Bring her. You want to have the relationship conversation in front of my 7-year-old? I want to have dinner with both of you. We can have the relationship conversation later, after she's not paying attention. Lily pays attention to everything. Then we'll be subtle. They left the dance floor. The rest of the evening passed in a blur of conversations Caleb barely registered. His brain was stuck on what had just happened, on the impossible fact that Vivian Sinclair had essentially just admitted she had feelings for him. At 11, the gala finally ended. Caleb retrieved his truck from valet while Vivian called her driver. They stood in the hotel's circular driveway, evening air cold against their formal clothes. Tomorrow, Vivian said. 6 o'clock. I'll pick you up. You don't have to. I want to. Let me do this properly. The valet pulled up in Caleb's truck. It looked even more ridiculous surrounded by luxury vehicles than he'd imagined, but Vivian didn't seem to notice or care. See you tomorrow, Caleb said. He drove home through empty streets, brain spinning. At the apartment, Mrs. Kim was asleep on the couch. Caleb paid her for the evening and walked her downstairs, then checked on Lily, who was sprawled across her bed with a book still clutched in her hand. He sat at the kitchen table for a long time, still in his tuxedo, trying to understand how his life had become this strange and complicated and unexpectedly good. His phone buzzed. Text from Vivian. Thank you for tonight. I meant what I said. Me too. Are you scared? Caleb thought about it. About the risk of dating someone he worked for, about introducing Lily to someone who might not stay, about the 1,000 ways this could blow up in his face. Terrified, he typed back. Good. Me too, Yikit. He went to bed eventually, but sleep was a long time coming. When he finally dozed off, he dreamed about dancing in ballrooms that turned into construction sites. Vivian in an evening gown and hard hat, both of them laughing at the absurdity of everything. Saturday morning arrived too fast. Caleb woke to Lily jumping on his bed. Dad, Mrs. Kim said you went to a fancy party with Mrs. Sinclair. Was there dancing? Yes, there was dancing. Did you step on her feet? Only twice. That's pretty good for you. Lily bounced harder. Are you going to marry her? What? No. Where did you get that idea? Madison's mom says when adults go to fancy parties together, that means they're getting married. Madison's mom needs to stop making sweeping generalizations about adult relationships. What does that mean? It means no, I'm not marrying anyone. We're just friends. Friends who dance. Yes, friends who dance. Lily gave him a look that suggested she wasn't buying it, but she let it go. They made breakfast together, pancakes that turned out slightly burnt because Caleb was distracted, and spent the morning cleaning the apartment. At noon, Caleb told Lily that Vivian was coming for dinner. Here? Lily looked around their small apartment with new eyes. But it's kind of messy. We just cleaned. Yeah, but it's not fancy like her office. She knows we're not fancy, it's fine. Should I wear my nice dress? You can wear whatever you want, baby. Lily disappeared into her room to begin what would apparently be a multi-hour outfit selection process. Caleb used the time to stress clean things that were already clean and wonder what he was supposed to make for dinner that would be impressive without looking like he was trying too hard. At 5:30, he gave up and ordered pizza. Vivian arrived at 6 exactly, carrying a bottle of wine and looking nervous in a way he'd never seen her before. She dressed casually, jeans and a sweater, like she was trying to fit into his world instead of expecting him to fit into hers. Hey, Caleb said, letting her inside. Hey. Vivian looked around the apartment. This is nice. It wasn't nice. It was small and worn, and the radiator clanked, and the walls were thin enough to hear their neighbors arguing. But she said it like she meant it. Lily emerged from her room wearing her purple dress with stars, the fancy one she saved for special occasions. Hi, Miss Sinclair. Hi, Lily. You look beautiful. I know. Dad ordered pizza because he doesn't know how to cook for fancy people. Pizza is perfect, Vivian said seriously. Fancy people eat pizza all the time. Really? Absolutely. I had pizza at a board meeting last month. They ate together at the small kitchen table, Lily dominating the conversation with stories about school and her friends and the stray cat that had finally let her pet it last week. Vivian listened like every word was fascinating, asked questions, laughed at Lily's jokes. After dinner, Lily insisted on showing Vivian her room, which was decorated with drawings and book covers and a map of the United States she was using to track all the places she wanted to visit someday. Chicago's boring, Lily explained. I want to go somewhere with mountains. Mountains are overrated, Vivian said. Too much hiking. Have you been to the mountains? I have. My father used to take me skiing in Colorado every winter. Was it fun? Sometimes. Other times it was cold and exhausting, and I mostly wanted to stay inside with hot chocolate. That sounds like my kind of mountain trip. They talked about travel and books and what Lily wanted to be when she grew up, which apparently changed every few weeks, but currently involved either engineering or owning a bookstore or both. At 8, Caleb suggested bedtime. Lily protested, but didn't fight too hard, clearly exhausted from the excitement of having company. Will you come back? Lily asked Vivian at her bedroom door. If your dad invites me. He will. He likes you. Lily, Caleb said warningly. What? You do. She looked at Vivian. He talks about you all the time. It's annoying. Bedtime, Caleb said firmly. Now. He got Lily settled with her book and a glass of water, kissed her forehead, and closed the door behind him. When he returned to the living room, Vivian was looking at the photos on his bookshelf. Lily as a baby, Lily's mother holding her in the hospital, various school pictures tracking her growth. She's amazing, Vivian said quietly. You've done an incredible job with her. Most days I have no idea what I'm doing. That's probably good parenting. The ones who think they have it figured out are usually wrong. They sat on the couch, maintaining a careful distance. Caleb poured wine into the mismatched glasses he'd found at a thrift store years ago. Outside, the city hummed with Saturday night noise. So, Vivian said, we should probably talk. Probably. I like you. A lot. More than is probably smart given that you work for me, and I'm terrible at relationships, and this could explode in both our faces. That's romantic. I'm not good at romantic. I'm good at honest. Okay, honestly, I like you too, and I'm terrified that I'm going to screw this up, or that you're going to realize I'm not interesting enough for someone like you, or that Lily will get attached and then get hurt if this doesn't work. Those are all valid concerns. But I want to try anyway. Vivian moved closer, closing the careful distance. Rules. We need rules. Okay. At work, we're professional. No special treatment. No letting personal feelings affect business decisions. If we have problems, we handle them outside the office. Agreed. Lily comes first, always. If she's uncomfortable with this, or if you think it's affecting her, we stop. No questions asked. Agreed. And we take this slow. I've never dated someone with a kid before. I don't know what I'm doing, and I'm going to make mistakes. I make mistakes too. That's kind of my whole thing. Vivian smiled. Then, before Caleb could overthink it, she leaned in and kissed him. It was soft and careful and absolutely nothing like the confident executive he'd first met 6 months ago. It was nervous and real and perfect in its imperfection. When they pulled apart, Vivian looked slightly dazed. "That was okay?" she asked. "That was better than okay." They sat close together for the rest of the evening, talking about nothing important, learning how to be something other than colleagues. Vivian left around 11, and Caleb walked her down to her car. "Tomorrow?" she asked. "I've got Lily all day." "I know, I meant all of us. Maybe the aquarium?" Lily mentioned she'd never been. "Yet, you want to spend your Sunday at the aquarium?" I want to spend my Sunday with you. The aquarium just happens to be where you'll be. That might be the most romantic thing anyone's ever said to me. The bar was clearly very low. She kissed him again, quick and sweet, then drove away into the night. Caleb stood on the sidewalk for a while, cold air biting through his jacket, trying to believe that this was actually happening. That someone like Vivian Sinclair looked at someone like him and saw something worth taking a chance on. Upstairs, he found Lily standing in the hallway in her pajamas. "You're supposed to be asleep," Caleb said. "You kissed her." "You were spying?" "I was getting water, and the window faces the street, and you were right there." She didn't sound upset, just observant. "So she's your girlfriend now?" "Maybe, if that's okay with you." Lily thought about it. "She's nice, and she brought wine, which Mrs. Kim says is polite, and she didn't treat me like a baby." "So that's a yes?" "That's a you can keep dating her, but I'm watching to make sure she's good enough for you. Deal." He tucked her back into bed, and this time she actually stayed. Caleb lay awake for a long time afterward, listening to the radiator clank and his neighbors argue and the city breathe outside his window. Everything was changing. Had been changing since that first night in the Meridian Center when he'd refused to sign off on dangerous equipment. One honest choice had led to another, and somehow he'd ended up here. New job, new relationship, new life taking shape around him. It was terrifying. But for the first time in years, Caleb wasn't just surviving, he was building something. And it felt good. The grand opening of Sinclair Tower was scheduled for a Friday evening in early December, exactly 1 year after Caleb had first walked into that building and found problems everyone else had missed. The timing felt significant, like the universe had a sense of narrative symmetry. The week leading up to the event was chaos. Final inspections, last-minute contractor emergencies, media prep, investor relations. Vivian worked 18-hour days, surviving on coffee and stubbornness. Caleb barely saw her outside of quick meetings and texts sent at 2 in the morning. On Wednesday night, he found her asleep at her desk, face pressed against a stack of permits. He covered her with his jacket and left quietly, texting Patricia to make sure someone drove her home. Thursday afternoon, 3 days before the opening, the fire suppression system failed during a routine test. Water flooded 2 floors, damaged newly installed drywall, and sent the entire construction team into panic mode. Caleb was on site within 20 minutes. The problem turned out to be a sensor malfunction, easily fixed, but the water damage was real. Contractors worked through the night replacing drywall and repainting. By Friday morning, you couldn't tell anything had gone wrong unless you knew where to look. "Crisis averted," Patricia said, handing Caleb coffee that tasted like battery acid. "You're getting good at this." "At what?" "Putting out fires, literal and metaphorical." The opening ceremony was scheduled for 7 p.m. By 6:30, the building was transformed. Lights glittering against Lake Michigan, red carpet leading to the entrance, media cameras positioned to capture every angle. Chicago's elite arrived in expensive cars, dressed to impress, ready to celebrate Sinclair Global's comeback. Caleb stood near the entrance in another tuxedo, this one actually his own after Vivian had insisted on buying it for him. Lily was beside him in a new dress, dark green with silver stars, looking older than 7 and slightly overwhelmed by the attention. "There's so many people," she whispered. "Yeah, fancy people love these things." "Why?" "Because it makes them feel important. That's kind of sad." "Yeah, baby, it kind of is." Vivian arrived fashionably late in a red dress that made every camera flash simultaneously. She worked the crowd with practiced ease, shaking hands and posing for photos, and being exactly what everyone expected her to be. But when she spotted Caleb and Lily near the entrance, something in her expression softened. She excused herself from a group of investors and made her way over. "You came," Vivian said. "Of course we came. You invited us." "I know, but I wasn't sure if Lily would want to deal with this circus." "Are you kidding?" Lily gestured at the scene around them. "This is the most interesting thing that's happened all week. Madison's going to be so jealous." "Who's Madison?" "My friend whose mom has a lot of opinions about everything." Vivian laughed. "I like your friend already." The ceremony itself was surprisingly brief. The mayor spoke about economic development and job creation. Margaret Sinclair gave a short speech about her son's legacy and her pride in Vivian's leadership. Then Vivian took the podium. Caleb had seen her give speeches before, but this one felt different, more personal. She talked about failure and redemption, about the importance of admitting mistakes and fixing them instead of hiding them. She talked about the people who'd made this building safe, singling out the engineering team and the construction crews who'd worked impossible hours. And then she did something unexpected. She looked directly at Caleb. "I want to recognize someone who saved this project and probably saved lives in the process." Caleb Hayes, my chief safety officer, was the first person to identify the structural problems that could have turned this building into a disaster. He did that knowing it would make him unpopular, knowing it might cost him his job, because he understood something fundamental. Buildings aren't about steel and concrete. They're about the people who live and work inside them. Safety isn't an inconvenience or a cost to be minimized. It's the whole point. Applause erupted. Caleb felt his face go hot as cameras turned toward him. Lily squeezed his hand, grinning like this was the best moment of her life. After the speech, they cut the ribbon. Doors opened. Guests flooded inside to tour the luxury apartments and rooftop amenities and common spaces that had been designed with actual human comfort in mind instead of just maximizing square footage. Caleb and Lily wandered through with everyone else, but Caleb kept getting stopped by people who wanted to congratulate him or ask questions about the safety systems. Structural engineers, architects, other building owners who'd heard about the retrofit and wanted details. Around 9, he finally extracted himself from a conversation with a developer from Minneapolis and found Lily sitting on a bench near the lobby, looking tired. "You okay?" Caleb asked. "Yeah, just a lot of people. Want to head home? Can we see the roof first? Miss Sinclair said there's a garden up there." They took the elevator to the rooftop level, which had been designed as a community space for residents. Gardens wrapped around the perimeter, still young but promising to be beautiful when they matured. String lights created warm pools of illumination. A few other guests wandered the space, admiring the view. Chicago spread out below them, lights stretching to the horizon. The lake was dark except for boat lights moving slowly across the water. Cold wind carried the smell of winter. "It's pretty," Lily said. "Yeah. Are you proud of this?" Caleb thought about it. About the year he'd spent fighting for this building. About the battles and compromises and moments when everything seemed impossible. "I'm proud we did it right," he said finally. "I'm proud nobody's going to die because we cut corners." That's a weird thing to be proud of. Maybe, but it's true. Vivian found them there around 10, looking exhausted but satisfied. She'd lost the heels somewhere, carrying them in one hand. "My feet are killing me," she announced. "Who decided heels were appropriate footwear for anything?" "Probably someone who never had to wear them," Caleb said. "I like your shoes," Lily offered. "They're sparkly. They're torture devices disguised as fashion, but thank you." Vivian sat on the bench, stretching her legs. "Hell of a night. Good speeches. I meant what I said. About you. You saved this project. You're the one who fought for it. Only because you gave me something worth fighting for." She glanced at Lily, then back at Caleb. "Can we talk? Somewhere private?" They left Lily with Patricia, who'd offered to show her the amenity level with its pool and gym and entertainment spaces. Vivian led Caleb to one of the empty model apartments on the 15th floor. The space was beautiful. Floor-to-ceiling windows, modern kitchen, open layout that felt spacious without being cavernous. Furniture had been staged to show what life could look like here. Perfect and unreal, like all model apartments. "I've been thinking about the future," Vivian said, standing near the windows. "About where the company goes from here and what I want my life to look like. Okay? Sterling's trial starts next month. He'll probably go to prison. The investors who threatened to pull out ended up staying, and we've got 3 new projects lined up for next year. The company's stable. Maybe better than stable. That's good." "It is. But I realized something while planning this opening. I spent the whole year so focused on not failing that I forgot to think about what success actually means." Caleb waited. Vivian seemed to be working through something, searching for words. "My father built this company," she continued, "but he also worked himself to death doing it. Literal death, heart attack at 59 because he never stopped, never slowed down, never prioritized anything except the next project. I watched him miss my childhood because he was always at the office or on a job site, and I promised myself I wouldn't do that." "But you are doing that." "I know, the irony isn't lost on me." She turned to face him. "I want something different. I want to build things that matter and also have a life outside of work. I want relationships that aren't transactional. I want to be present instead of constantly preparing for the next crisis." "That sounds healthy." "It sounds terrifying because I don't know how to do any of that. Work is what I'm good at. It's where I'm confident. Everything else feels like trying to speak a language I never learned." Caleb crossed the room to stand beside her at the window. Below them, the city glittered with Friday night energy. "You're doing okay," he said. "You've been dating me for 2 months. And you haven't run away screaming yet. That's progress." "I almost ran away screaming at least 3 times. But you didn't. That's what counts." Vivian leaned against him, something she'd started doing recently when they were alone. Small moments of vulnerability that felt like gifts. "I want to ask you something," she said. "And if it's too soon or too much, just say so." "Okay. Move in with me." Caleb's brain stopped working. "What?" "Not here. Not in one of these apartments. I have a place in Lincoln Park. Big enough for all of us. Good school district for Lily. Backyard where she could finally get the dog she keeps asking you about. Vivian, we've been together 2 months. I know. Which is why I'm saying it's fine if this is too fast. But I've been thinking about it, and I can't come up with a single good reason to wait. I like being around you. I like being around Lily. I like the life we could build together more than the life I'm currently living alone." "What about work? The complications?" "We're already managing those, and honestly, I don't care what anyone thinks. I'd rather have something real with complications than something easy and hollow." Caleb looked out at the city, trying to organize his thoughts into something coherent. 2 months ago, he'd been living above a laundromat, struggling to pay Lily's medical bills, uncertain about everything. Now someone was offering him stability and partnership and a future that seemed almost impossible. "I need to talk to Lily first," he said finally. "This affects her more than me. If she's not comfortable with it, the answer's no." Completely fair, yeah. And we'd need to figure out logistics. What happens if things don't work out? Where would Lily and I go? "I've thought about that. The place is in my name, but I'd set up a legal arrangement that gives you and Lily security regardless of our relationship status. You wouldn't be dependent on me staying together." "You really have thought about this." "I'm good at planning. It's kind of my whole thing." They stood together at the window for a while longer, not talking, just existing in the same space. Outside, the party continued. Inside, the future was taking shape in ways neither of them could have predicted a year ago. Eventually, they went back downstairs. Lily was showing Patricia her notebook full of drawings, explaining each one in detail. Patricia listened with genuine interest, asking questions that made Lily light up. "Ready to go home?" Caleb asked. "Can we come back and see this building again?" "Anytime you want." They said their goodbyes. Vivian walked them to the truck, which looked even more absurd parked among the Teslas and Mercedes than usual. "Think about what I asked," Vivian said quietly. No pressure, just think about it. I will. She kissed him goodbye, hugged Lily, and went back inside to handle the remaining guests and media obligations. Caleb drove home through empty streets, Lily half asleep in the passenger seat. At home, he got her ready for bed, but she was more awake than he'd thought. Dad, can I ask you something? Always. Do you love Ms. Sinclair? The question caught him off guard. Why are you asking? Because I heard Madison's mom say that adults who date for more than a month are either in love or wasting each other's time. Is she wasting your time? Madison's mom needs to stop making declarations about relationships. But do you love her, Blas? Caleb sat on the edge of Lily's bed. I think I might. But love is complicated. It's not just a feeling. It's choosing to show up even when things are hard. It's trusting someone with the important parts of yourself. It's building something together. That sounds like work. The best things usually are. Lily thought about that. I like her. She's nice to me, and she listens when I talk instead of pretending to listen like some grown-ups do. She does listen well. If you married her, would she be my stepmom? We're not talking about marriage yet, baby. We're just dating. But if you did, then yes, she would be. Would that be okay with you? I think so, as long as I still get to be your favorite. You'll always be my favorite. That's not changing no matter what. Lily seemed satisfied with that answer. She lay back against her pillow, eyes already closing. Dad, one more thing. Yeah? I think you should tell her you love her before someone else does. I'll keep that in mind. She fell asleep within minutes. Caleb sat there for a while, watching her breathe, thinking about the conversation he needed to have. Over the next week, he talked to Lily seriously about Vivian's offer. Not just once, but several times, making sure she understood what it would mean. Moving to a new neighborhood, changing schools, living with someone who wasn't family yet but might become family. Lily asked good questions. What if Miss Sinclair got tired of them? What if she and Caleb broke up? What happened to their stuff? Could she bring everything from her room? Caleb answered honestly. He couldn't promise nothing would go wrong. He couldn't guarantee the relationship would work forever. But he could promise that he'd always take care of her, that she'd always have a home, that nothing about their core relationship would change. I think we should do it, Lily said finally. Miss Sinclair makes you happy, and her house has a backyard where we could get a dog. The dog is not the deciding factor here. It's a pretty important factor. They told Vivian the following Sunday over brunch at a diner near Caleb's apartment. She'd been trying not to seem anxious about the answer, but Caleb could see the tension in her shoulders. We talked about it, Caleb said. The answer's yes, if you're still sure. Berhatom. Relief flooded Vivian's face. I'm sure. I have conditions, though. Of course you do. Lily gets her own room, decorated however she wants, and we get a dog. A dog? A dog, Lily confirmed. That's non-negotiable. Fair enough. Anything else? We take this slow, Caleb said. We don't rush into trying to be a perfect family. We figure it out as we go. I can do slow. I'm not great at it, but I can try. They moved in gradually over the next month. The house in Lincoln Park was bigger than anywhere Caleb had ever lived, with actual rooms instead of a single space divided by furniture. Lily got to pick her room and spent hours planning how to arrange everything. Vivian helped her paint one wall dark blue for a mural of constellations. The dog came from a shelter in early January, a medium-sized mutt named Rocket, who'd been abandoned and was nervous around loud noises, but absolutely loved Lily from the moment they met. Vivian claimed she didn't like dogs, but was caught multiple times letting Rocket sleep on her lap while she worked. Work continued. Caleb oversaw safety protocols on 3 new projects, while Vivian fought battles with investors and board members who still didn't understand why she'd chosen integrity over profit. They kept their relationship professional at the office, but everyone knew. It was impossible to hide the way they looked at each other during meetings. Sterling's trial concluded in February. He was sentenced to 6 years for criminal negligence and fraud. Several of his allies on the board resigned in protest. Margaret Sinclair replaced them with people who actually cared about building things safely. In March, Lily celebrated her 8th birthday with a party at the house. 15 kids from her new school ran screaming through the backyard, while Rocket barked and tried to join the chaos. Vivian had hired a magician and a face painter and made approximately 700 cupcakes because she'd refused to accept that store-bought was acceptable. You didn't have to do all this, Caleb said, watching his daughter laugh with her friends. I wanted to. She deserves this. You know you're kind of amazing, right? I'm really not. I'm just trying. Trying counts. They were messy sometimes. Vivian worked too much and forgot to communicate when she was stressed. Caleb got defensive when she offered to help with things he'd been handling alone for years. They argued about small things and had to learn how to fight without it becoming destructive. But they figured it out. Slowly, imperfectly, with lots of mistakes and occasional tears and conversations that lasted until 3 in the morning. They built something real instead of something perfect. On a Saturday in late April, almost exactly a year after the opening, Caleb woke to find Lily and Vivian already in the kitchen making pancakes. Badly. There was batter on the ceiling somehow. Don't ask, Vivian said when she saw him. It was an accident involving the mixer. How do you get batter on the ceiling? I said, don't ask. They ate breakfast together, Rocket begging for scraps under the table. Afterward, they took the dog to the park and spent the afternoon doing nothing important, just existing together in the spring sunshine while Lily threw a tennis ball and Rocket retrieved it with excessive enthusiasm. I have something to tell you, Vivian said while they sat on a bench watching Lily play. Caleb's heart jumped. Good something or bad something? Good, I think. I'm stepping back from some of my responsibilities at Sinclair Global, promoting some of the junior executives, redistributing the workload. I'm tired of running myself into the ground. What brought this on? I realized I was turning into my father, missing everything important because I was always focused on the next crisis. And I don't want to do that anymore. I don't want Lily to remember me as the woman who was never around. I don't want you to resent me for choosing work over us. I wouldn't resent you. You might, eventually, and I don't want to risk it. She looked at him. You showed me that there's more to life than winning, that sometimes the point isn't to build the biggest company or close the most deals. Sometimes the point is just to be present for the people you love. When did I show you that? Every single day. The way you prioritize Lily, the way you're willing to walk away from things that compromise your values, the way you choose connection over success. I choose success sometimes, not when it matters, and that's what makes you different. They sat together while Lily played, while Rocket ran in circles, while the afternoon stretched into evening. The park emptied slowly as families headed home for dinner. Eventually, Lily came back, grass-stained and exhausted and completely happy. Can we come back tomorrow? She asked. We can come back whenever you want, Caleb said. At home, they made dinner together. Vivian tried to help, but was mostly just in the way, which she eventually accepted with good humor. They ate on the back porch, watching the sun set over the neighborhood while Rocket dozed at their feet. I love you, Vivian said suddenly. Both of you. I know I don't say it enough, but I do. You changed my life. You changed ours too, Caleb said. For the better? Definitely for the better, Shamsubayt. Lily leaned against Vivian's shoulder, already half asleep. Are we a family now? Yeah, baby, Vivian said softly. I think we are. Later that night, after Lily was asleep and the house was quiet, Caleb and Vivian sat in the living room talking about nothing important. Plans for the week, groceries they needed to buy, whether they should finally replace the broken fence in the backyard. I keep waiting for the other shoe to drop, Vivian admitted. For something to go wrong, or for you to realize you made a mistake getting involved with me. Not going to happen. You don't know that. I know that we've survived every difficult thing we've faced so far. I know that we're good at figuring things out together, and I know that I love you, which makes the hard stuff worth it. When did you figure that out? A while ago. Probably that night at the gala when you asked me to dance and looked terrified that I'd say no. I was terrified. I know. That's when I realized you were human instead of just impressive. Vivian laughed. That's the most backhanded romantic confession I've ever heard. I'm not good at romantic. I'm good at honest. Honest work. They sat together in comfortable silence, the kind that only comes when you've stopped trying to impress each other and started just being real. Outside, the city hummed with its usual chaos. Inside, Everything was quiet and warm and exactly what it needed to be. The following month, Sinclair Tower won an award for sustainable design and safety innovation. Vivian accepted it at a ceremony downtown, giving a speech about the importance of putting people before profits. The industry took notice. Other developers started reaching out, asking Sinclair Global to consult on their projects, wanting to replicate what had worked. By summer, the company had more work than they could handle. Vivian hired aggressively, building a team of engineers and safety specialists who actually cared about doing things right. Caleb trained them personally, teaching them not just the technical aspects, but the philosophy behind it. Buildings weren't just structures. They were promises to the people who'd trust them with their lives. In August, they took a vacation. An actual vacation where Vivian turned off her phone and didn't check email and just existed in the moment. They went to Colorado, rented a cabin near the mountains, spent a week hiking and reading and teaching Lily to fish. "This is nice," Vivian said one evening, sitting on the cabin's porch while Lily played with Rocket in the yard. "I forgot what it felt like to not be stressed." "Get used to it," Caleb said. "We're doing this at least once a year, Sheets. Deal." They watched the sun set over the mountains, painting the sky in colors that seemed impossible. Lily ran over, breathless and happy, to show them a rock she'd found that looked like a heart. "Can I keep it?" she asked. "Of course," Vivian said. "Every good rock deserves a home." That night, after Lily was asleep, Vivian and Caleb sat by the fire talking about the future. Real plans now, not just vague hopes. Where they wanted to be in 5 years, what they wanted to build together, how they'd balance work and family, and everything else life threw at them. "I want to marry you," Caleb said suddenly. "Not right now, necessarily, but eventually. When it feels right." Vivian looked startled. "That's the least romantic proposal I've ever heard." It's not a proposal, it's a statement of intent." "Oh, well, in that case," she smiled. "I want to marry you too. Eventually, when we're ready." "Think Lily would be okay with it?" "I think Lily would demand to be the flower girl and also in charge of planning the entire ceremony." "That sounds accurate." They sat by the fire until it burned down to embers, talking and laughing and planning a future that felt both exciting and secure. Not perfect, never perfect, but real and honest and built on a foundation that could withstand whatever came next. September brought them back to reality. Work picked up, schedules got complicated, the usual chaos of daily life reasserted itself. But they managed it better now. They'd learned how to communicate when things got overwhelming, how to support each other through stress, how to prioritize what actually mattered. On a Tuesday evening in late September, Caleb came home to find Lily doing homework at the kitchen table and Vivian attempting to cook dinner. The kitchen looked like a disaster zone. "What are you making?" Caleb asked carefully. "I'm not entirely sure anymore. It started as pasta but evolved into something experimental. Want help?" "Desperately." They cooked together while Lily narrated her day at school, complaining about fractions and talking about a boy in her class who kept pulling her hair. Rocket slept under the table, occasionally opening one eye to check if food was being dropped. After dinner, they played board games in the living room. Vivian was terrible at Monopoly and refused to admit it, arguing about rules she was clearly making up. Lily eventually bankrupted both of them and celebrated with excessive enthusiasm. "You're too good at this," Caleb told his daughter. "I learned from watching you negotiate with contractors." "Oh," Lily said seriously. "Always ask for more than you want so you have room to compromise." "I taught you that." "You didn't have to teach me, I just paid attention." Later, after Lily was in bed, Caleb found Vivian in the home office reviewing plans for a new project. He leaned against the doorframe, watching her work. "You know you don't have to do this tonight," he said. "I know, but I want to get ahead of it before tomorrow's meeting. The meeting's at 10. You have time." Vivian looked up from the blueprints. "You're right. I'm doing the thing again, aren't I? The thing where you work until you're too exhausted to think straight?" "Yeah, you're doing the thing." She closed the laptop. "Old habits." "I know, but you're getting better." They went to bed together, talked about nothing important until they were both too tired to keep their eyes open. In the morning, they'd wake up and do it all again. Work and family, and the constant balancing act of trying to be good at both. But that was life. Not perfect, not always easy, but worth showing up for every single day. The years passed faster than Caleb expected. Lily grew into a teenager with her mother's sharp mind and her father's stubborn integrity. She talked about studying engineering, following in Vivian's footsteps while bringing her own perspective. She never forgot where she came from, the small apartment above the laundromat, the nights when medical bills felt insurmountable. Sinclair Global grew too, but differently than before. Not chasing size for its own sake, but building things that mattered. Safe buildings, sustainable projects, developments that actually served communities instead of just extracting value from them. Other companies noticed and started following their example. The industry changed slowly, but it changed. Caleb and Vivian got married on a Saturday in June, 5 years after they'd first met. Small ceremony, just family and close friends. Lily did serve as the flower girl and had indeed tried to take over the planning process before Vivian gently reminded her that some decisions belonged to the adults. Margaret Sinclair attended, proud of the woman her daughter had become and the family she'd built. Patricia cried through the entire ceremony. Even Rocket was there, wearing a bow tie and behaving himself remarkably well. During the reception, Caleb found himself standing at the edge of the crowd, watching Vivian laugh with Lily about something he couldn't hear. His wife now. His family. A life he'd built one honest choice at a time. Margaret appeared at his elbow, holding champagne. "You did good, Caleb. I got lucky." Luck had nothing to do with it. "You were brave enough to tell the truth when everyone else was willing to lie. That takes character." "I just didn't want people to die." That's what character looks like. Caring about the right things even when it costs you. She raised her glass. To honesty, and to the stubborn people who refuse to compromise on it. Boa mi sisha setsil. They toasted. The party continued around them, full of laughter and music and people who'd fought hard for something better. That night, after the guests had left and Lily had finally gone to bed, Caleb and Vivian sat on their back porch watching the stars. Rocket dozed at their feet, too tired from the excitement to even dream. "We did it," Vivian said quietly. "Did what?" "Built something real, something that matters." "Yeah, we did." "Think we can keep doing it?" "Yeah, probably, though I imagine we'll screw up pretty regularly." "Obviously, but we'll figure it out. We always do." They sat together in comfortable silence, watching the night deepen around them. Inside, their daughter slept safely. Above them, stars wheeled in ancient patterns. Around them, the life they'd built together continued its imperfect, beautiful existence. And Caleb thought about the journey that had brought him here. From the single father nobody noticed to the man who'd helped reshape an entire company's values. From the apartment above the laundromat to this house full of love and noise and possibility. The truth was simple, even if the path had been complicated. People mattered more than profit. Safety mattered more than speed. Integrity mattered more than convenience. Those principles had guided every choice, even when they were difficult, especially when they were difficult. He taught Lily those lessons not through lectures but through actions, through refusing to compromise when it mattered, through standing up to people with more power because it was right, through choosing the hard path when the easy one would have been faster. And she'd learned, not just the lessons he'd intended to teach, but deeper ones about what it meant to live with purpose, about building things that lasted not because they were profitable, but because they were worth building. That was the inheritance he'd give her, not money or connections or an easy life, but the knowledge that she could trust herself to make good choices when they mattered. That integrity wasn't a luxury for people who could afford it, but a foundation for anyone who chose to build their life on solid ground. Vivian squeezed his hand. "What are you thinking about?" "Everything. Nothing. How lucky I am." "Luck again. You keep saying that." "Because it's true. I could have looked the other way that first night at the Meridian. I could have signed off on the problems and taken my paycheck and pretended I didn't see what was wrong. But you didn't. But I didn't. And that one choice led to everything else. That's not luck. That's character." Maybe she was right. Maybe the difference between a life worth living and a life wasted came down to moments like that. Small choices that didn't feel significant at the time, but added up to something meaningful. He'd chosen honesty. Not because he was noble or heroic, but because he couldn't look at his daughter and teach her that compromise was acceptable when people's lives were at stake. That simple principle had changed everything. Above them, a plane passed across the sky, lights blinking in the darkness. Somewhere in Chicago, someone was working late, Someone was falling in love. Someone was making choices that would ripple forward into futures they couldn't yet imagine. And here, in this house they'd turned into a home, Caleb Hayes sat with his wife and felt something close to contentment. Not perfect happiness, because that didn't exist, but the deep satisfaction of knowing he'd built something good, something honest, something worth defending. The stars wheeled overhead. The city hummed with its endless energy, and three people who'd found each other against impossible odds slept safely under one roof, trusting that tomorrow would bring new challenges and new chances to choose what mattered. That was enough. More than enough. It was everything.